This young man, with a single draw of his sword, astonished all the trainees and instructors. His power far surpassed that of a typical trainee. Facing 5 notorious criminals sentenced to death, he dispatched them in a mere 10 seconds. One might assume he hailed from some noble family, having received elite training. Unfortunately, he was just a commoner, following his master, whose potential was discovered by others. To survive, he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his left eye, because his commander claimed it hindered his reaction time. He never suspected that the noble imperial cause they championed was nothing but a conspiracy to turn children into military weapons for a tyrannical empire. It all began 100 years ago. The story unfolds on a future Earth, where technology has advanced to an unbelievable degree. However, this progress brought not happiness, but only endless wars. And as things inevitably do, Earth was destroyed, forcing humanity to wander through space. After a long journey, humankind discovered a new planet to call home, naming it Novice. This new world reunited the scattered remnants of humanity across the galaxy. 3 nations quickly arose on Novice. First, the Bellator Federation, a melting pot of extraterrestrial species and Earth citizens. Second, the Axarutan Empire, boasting a powerful military force of mechanized warriors. And finally, the Holy Kozite Alliance, whose priests wielded divine energy and unwavering spiritual strength. However, even on a new planet, resources are finite, and this became the cause of new conflicts. Luca, a fresh-faced recruit in the Axarutan Empire's Royal Guard, now faced a grueling evaluation of his abilities. Following the instructions of Hemilias, the commander of the Royal Guard, he excelled in the test, unlocking new limits within himself. Soon after, the old man Hemilias rewarded Luca by unexpectedly removing one of his eyes, replacing it with a new one capable of predicting trajectories. In a laboratory, Luca also met a peer who looked like a true-born dandy named Eiley while he was resting. After a long conversation, they decided to become teammates, sharing a lofty goal. In Luca's burning gaze, like a sacred flame, was the yearning for a tomorrow, where he stood at the pinnacle of power and prestige. This story follows the journey of a boy trained as a military weapon in an empire that uses firepower to spread its brand of democracy across the planet. In the training room, Luca, along with Eiley and the Royal Guard, were practicing their marksmanship. Luca raised his gun, assuming a precise stance, his eyes cold and focused on the target dummy, then calmly squeezed the trigger, firing repeatedly. Luca's eye, injured in a previous battle, had been replaced with a specialized mechanical eye. For combat, Luca quickly shot the targets in front of him until they were smoking. He holstered his gun, resting for a moment. A skilled marksman, all his shots had landed squarely in the heads of the targets. Eiley poked his head over, impressed by Luca's skill. You hit every target in the head. Being a top student really is on a whole different level, huh? Luca remained silent in response to Eiley's praise. Eiley, an exuberant young man, turned and cheerfully asked, "Have you gotten used to your implanted right eye? Isn't it unfair that you specialize in close combat, but are still this good with a gun?" Luca closed his eyes and replied indifferently. It's normal for members of the Royal Guard to be proficient with all types of weapons. Besides, Luca seemed annoyed, grumbling, "I don't want to hear that from someone who shoots every shot through the same spot." Embarrassed by Luca's criticism, Eiley chuckled a few times and said, "Guns are my specialty." Luca's tone became friendlier. "If you keep being so nonchalant, I'll eventually surpass you." Eiley said cheerfully that "I'm really looking forward to that. Like I said, I'm always rooting for you." Silence fell between them again. After a while, Eiley suddenly spoke, "The Empire needs people like you." His words made Luca freeze. He turned to look at Eiley, tears welling in his eyes. Eiley held out his hands, staring at them with a sad smile. The value of ability and talent in the Empire is declining. As long as someone has status and power, an incompetent person can still become a genius. After a pause, Eiley continued, "However, if more geniuses like you appear, people will talk more about true geniuses and the imposters, won't they?" As a member of the Royal Guard, upon hearing Eiley's half-joking, half-serious question, Lucas said coldly, "Eiley, be quiet. You're criticizing the Empire system. If I report exactly what you just said to headquarters, even if you're a Kataka, you won't be able to escape punishment." Hearing Lucas' threats, Eiley just smirked. He then turned to leave, saying boldly, "If you were really going to do that, you wouldn't have told me first. I know you're a good person." Seeing Eiley's flippant attitude, Luca had nothing more to say. Before leaving, Eiley didn't forget to thank Luca. "Thanks for worrying about me." Luca heard him, but didn't reply. He just cocked his gun, preparing to resume his practice, thinking to himself, what a nuisance. In the Axarutan Empire, during the third quarter's 2-year training period, a convoy of armored tanks was on the move. Royal Guard Commander Hemilias announced, "Luca and Eiley will be platoon leaders for this training." Exercise. Standing at the head of the guards, he ordered his subordinates in a commanding voice, if any recruits have a problem with that, stand up and leave. After Himilia's finished speaking, the ranks of recruits remained in formation, with Ailey and Luca at the front. He cleared his throat and continued. Then I'll continue with what I was saying. He described the mission the recruits were about to undertake, that there's a Kozite outpost illegally stationed on our territory across the canyon. This training exercise is to test your combat capabilities on the battlefield. The convoy of armored tanks stopped in front of the base. Before the recruits departed, Himilias gave a stern warning. No need to take prisoners. Just slaughter them all. The rookie squad quickly set foot on the land they were assigned to. Ailey and Luca led the group, Ailey with his hands on his hips. This is our first real combat mission. Hearing this, Luca teased him. What? Are you nervous? You slaughtered people in training. Contrary to Luca, Ailey seemed worried about the real combat mission. But this is the first time we've faced an outside force. The Bellator Federation, the Holy Kozite Alliance, and even the Axarutan Empire all have ancestors who are humans from planet Earth. Luca knew what Ailey was worried about. Don't let your emotions get the better of you, Ailey. He glanced at the bodyguards equipped with high-grade weapons. You think those high-grade bodyguards are here to protect us? The high-grade bodyguards Luca mentioned were the fully mechanized armored troops. Luca, as if understanding the Empire's intentions, whispered to Ailey, they're definitely here to monitor us. They'll even take our lives if we capture any prisoners. Fools who don't know their place don't belong in the Royal Guard. Luca clearly understood the rules of survival on this planet. Despite his young age, his eyes seemed to have witnessed countless hardships that on planet Novice. To the Empire, other forces are just flies. We've learned one thing. Everyone out there uses and deceives the Empire for their own benefit. Ailey listened to him, falling silent. His mechanical eyes activated. Ailey softly said, I know. My mechanical eyes are locating the coordinates of the people below. That's also what I was taught. The mechanized troops had swept through this place, leaving it submerged in a sea of fire and rain of blood. Alarm lights shone everywhere, ringing loudly. Among the mechanized troops slaughtering the area, Luca, fully armored and carrying a sword, explored while thinking. It seems like none of the Kozans are armed. Just as Luca thought this training exercise would end smoothly, something caught his attention. In front of Luca, before the tip of his small, sharp blade, a child was huddled, terrified, covering their face and crying out for their mother in sobs. Luca was stunned. He felt a flicker of compassion dot the child. He watched the child tremble uncontrollably, crying silently, too scared to move, someone with no fighting strength and no power to resist. Lucas stared at the child, whose face was smeared with tears from fear. He thought to himself, I wish I had a gun. No matter how hardened he was, Luca was still human, and more than that, he had experienced this carnage. Looking at the terrified, crying child, he cursed under his breath, damn it. But Himilias' words haunted him like a mantra. No need to take prisoners. Just slaughter them all. Luca removed the iron helmet from his head, his eyes glowing blood red. He raised his sword, telling himself, don't hesitate. They're just insects consuming the Empire's resources. Luca thrust his long sword through the cliff face with such force that the rock shattered. The child froze in terror as the blade stopped just a hair's breadth from their ear. Luca leaned down and whispered to the child, pretend to be dead, and you might live. Although he knew this was against orders, his human conscience wouldn't allow him to do it. I shouldn't do this. If headquarters finds out about this, who knows what will happen to me? Luca turned and walked away, leaving the child there. Before leaving, he hesitated, wondering if he should go back and finish the job. Just then, a shot whizzed past Luca, aimed directly at the child's head. Luca looked up in surprise. Above, on the tower, a mech stood, aiming down. Luca recognized the pilot as Ailey. Luca started, a pang of fear in his chest. Ailey, how long had he been there? Had he seen everything? Ailey narrowed his eyes at Luca, sweat trickling down Luca's cheek. Luca was afraid, but he tried to stay calm. Ailey wouldn't report his hesitation, but if any other recruits had seen, Luca decided he had to keep an eye on Ailey. Just then, the tower where Ailey stood exploded. Luca jolted, shouting Ailey. At that moment, a man with immense power stood beside Luca. He launched an attack, aiming directly at Luca. Oh hell with you Axarotan scum. Luca quickly turned to face him. Was he the one who caused the explosion? Luca seemed to recognize the man's identity through the source of his power. If he could cause such an explosion without a weapon, then at that moment, Ailey also descended from the tower, attacking the man directly. But immediately after, Ailey's entire body was enveloped in a blue light. The man turned and attacked, and Ailey instantly exploded. Luca's eyes widened in horror, words failing him. Inability. There's an ability user. The man roared in fury, his power overflowing. This isn't a base. It's a residential area. The people you're slaughtering just want to survive. Luca and the Mech Legion faced the man, ready to fight. Luca was in a state of panic. Does the captain know? If we'd been informed earlier, Eiley wouldn't have. Eiley's body lay shattered amidst the debris, his hand blown far away. He whispered to Luca, "Luca, it was my carelessness. I have no excuse." Luca tried to comfort him. "I'll take care of him. You just rest." Luca blamed himself intensely. He thought his hesitation had caused this. Panting from exhaustion, he thought, "I've studied countless times how to deal with an ability user. I'll do everything I can to atone for this mistake." He spoke with difficulty. "I'll handle him. The rest of you, disperse and secure the base." As soon as Luca gave the order, the other soldiers left, leaving only him and the ability user. The ability user went berserk, seeing the other soldiers leave. Power surged in his hand. "Where do you think you're going, you bastards?" Luca frowned slightly, realizing the truth. It seemed the man was acting as a decoy to buy time for his allies to escape. He remembered his training. To use their abilities, ability users needed a preparatory movement. Luca immediately recognized the man's tactic. If so, he would use a hand seal. As long as he could see the initiation, with his agility and speed, he could easily dodge the blast that I can react to the explosion. The man with supernatural power growled in fury, blood trickling from his nose from overexertion. Luca was also struggling. "I'd prefer a war of attrition. But there's no other way, even if my body collapses for maintaining these rapid movements." Luca was pushing himself to the limit. "I want a war of attrition. But there's no other way, even if my body collapses for maintaining these rapid movements." At that moment, Luca faced another of the ability user's explosions head-on. "I still have to attack in this state." Luca strengthened his resolve, telling himself, "Faster!" And then he faced the explosion directly. The explosion. Luca, through the sea of flames, steadily charged towards the man with his sword. The man's eyes widened, his teeth gritted. He lunged, closing in on the ability user, just as he felt a surge of excitement, thinking he had him captured. At that moment, a powerful hand slammed towards his face. The man, using all his strength, aimed a blow at Luca's head. But Luca, at this point, had already thrust his sword into the man. Luca's helmet shattered, his eyes wide with shock. He wondered, would he die? Luca's eyes were wide open, bracing for the pain, but the man suddenly cried out in alarm. How? Tears welled up in the man's eyes, even though he had been stabbed by Luca. Compassion filled his gaze. You're just a child. Luca gripped the hilt of his sword, pushing down with all his might. He forced the man to the ground, gritting his teeth as he drove the sword deeper. The ability user was defeated at Luca's hands. Luca gasped for breath, exhausted after the fierce battle. He looked at his half-shattered helmet, thinking, if he had continued that attack, I would be dead. Luca continued to pant, seemingly unable to regain his normal breathing. Kozite is made up of fanatics beyond human comprehension, so why didn't he slaughter me? But his faith in the Empire remained unshaken. He told himself, keep going, don't let emotions overwhelm you in battle. All of this is for the Empire. Luca turned his head, looking at the bodies piled up on the battlefield. He muttered incessantly, as if reinforcing his faith, slaughter those who threaten the safety of the Emperor and the people of the Empire. Luca struggled to regain his breath, as well as his faith in the Empire. It is the reason for the existence of the Royal Guard. At this moment, amidst the raging inferno, mournful cries for help echoed everywhere. The pleas, like a blunt knife, chipped away at Luca's faith. Help me, please, spare me. But he reminded himself that executing these people was for the Empire, nothing more. At Axaraten Hospital, in a recovery room, rows of sleeping pods were filled with a strange liquid. Ailuis's voice slowly echoed in Luca's ear. Luca, how does it feel to almost die? He showed no emotion, simply replying, tell yourself that, Ailui. You were the one who almost died. He glanced at Luca, his tone laced with teasing. This time I'm getting new arms and legs. What about you? He stared at the ceiling, calmly answering, my back is ruined, so I'm getting a titanium spine and artificial skin. Anyway, in a few years, I'll be getting a completely new body, so why not do it a little sooner? Ailui was silent for a long time, glancing over at his sleeping pod, and asked in a low voice, the higher-ups must know there was an ability user there, right? He spoke slowly and calmly. The reason we haven't heard anything about this is because it was a test. Luca quickly understood. The seniors didn't come to our aid either. They must have known we could handle it. After all, no one died in the battle. Recalling the events of that time caused a flicker of doubt in his heart. But how? Another trainee and I were attacked directly, and we both survived. It's too strange to just dismiss it as a coincidence. Checkmate. A flicker of understanding crossed his cold eyes. Perhaps that ability user never intended to slaughter us from the beginning. The pathetic image of the ability user flashed through Luca's mind again, along with their choked last words. You're just a kid? The thoughts swirling in his head made him grit his teeth and widen his eyes that I'm a soldier now. His mistake was letting me live. That pathetic mercy is why Kozites will keep dying. Let him rot in hell, regretting it as he watches his comrades fall one by one. Ailui's gentle voice suddenly broke broke through his thoughts. Luca, why did you spare that Kozite girl? A flicker of contemplation crossed his deep blue eyes. Can you tell me why? He turned his back to Eiley, his tone laced with annoyance. You talk too much. Did you get a new tongue along with your new arm? Luca hid his grimace and gritted teeth, muttering it was a mistake. It won't happen again. The scene shifted to the captain standing sternly in a room, making an announcement that, so, you've completed 2 of your 4 years of Royal Guard training. There will now be younger recruits than you, so set an example for them. His gaze fell upon Luca and Eiley, who stood at the front of the formation. He emphasized his words, especially you two, Luca and Eiley, as the top 2 ranks. You can even aim for the position of platoon leader. A knowing smile touched the captain's stern face. Continue to strive for the glory of the Emperor and his people. Both of them responded in unison as he finished, Sir, yes, sir. Luca's eyes remained fixed on him, Captain. Next is the structure of the Royal Guard. He continued, the Royal Guard has a fairly simple organizational structure. There are 1,000 guards divided into 10 platoons. All are commanded by a captain, the commander of the Royal Guard. The captain is also the leader of the first platoon. The captain's calm and stern voice resonated. That's all. Continue your training. Thoughts began to form in Luca's young mind, and trainees like me, after completing full-body mechanization, will be assigned to the lowest-ranking platoon, the 10th platoon. A fierce determination settled on his youthful face, and if I become the leader of the 10th platoon, I can make it strong. The scene changed again to a training arena, where the figures of Luca and Eiley could be seen sparring. In a sudden move, Eiley clenched his fist and lunged towards him. However, he calmly dodged and effortlessly neutralized Eiley's attack. The two of them exchanged over a dozen blows. Sweat trickled down his cheek as Luca assessed him. Eiley had gotten stronger with his new arm. Luca shifted his weight and launched a decisive kick. But, to Eiley's surprise, he disrupted his forward momentum. His eyes widened as he stumbled off balance. Luca seized the opportunity and immediately threw a punch towards Eiley. However, his fist stopped just short of his nose. Luca flashed a confident smile and declared, that's 124 matches and 124 wins, Eiley. The two of them sat on the roof of a building, taking in the view as they talked. Eiley spoke first. I thought I'd finally win this time. His calm voice gently resonated. If getting new parts makes you stronger, what's the point of training? He tilted his head slightly, glancing at Luca's profile before murmuring, seems like you've gotten even more rigid after that. The captain position seems to really matter to you. Luca's gaze remained fixed forward as he simply replied, of course. His steady voice explained his reasoning to Eiley. If I have experience serving in the Royal Guard, I'll be welcomed anywhere. However, you don't seem to understand the crux of the matter. You're already in a position where your background doesn't matter anymore. Why not relax a bit? Luca's cold eyes swept over Eiley's form as he explained indifferently. Unlike you, I have nowhere to return to. I have to keep climbing or it's all over for me. Suddenly, Luca became curious about Eiley's reasons for joining the military. Eiley, you have talent but lack motivation. So why did you want to become a guard? A slight smile appeared on Eiley's face as he asked softly, you feel that way too, huh? Then, as he began, a light kindled in his pale blue eyes. I once wanted to be a scholar, an archaeologist, to study mysterious ancient civilizations. Luca, without looking at Eiley, calmly asked, if you wanted that, why didn't you do it? Eiley's light laughter echoed softly in the air. Individual research into ancient civilizations is forbidden in the Empire. Besides, my family has produced countless commanders. They'd never allow me to do anything else. Luca's brow furrowed slightly, curious about the world of a noble. You mean you're upset because you can't do what you want? How naive. There are countless people in the slums who aren't even sure they'll live through the day. Countless people grateful just to have scraps to eat. Eiley's laughter and tone grew softer than I thought you'd say that. I was just telling you, my friend, about my secret, Luca. However, he genuinely considered his friend. Someone could twist your words into an insult against the Empire. If someone reports you, you're finished. Eiley closed his eyes, enjoying the cool night breeze against his skin. But you won't do that, just like how I've kept your secrets. Luca's face was now shrouded in shadow, his expression unreadable that I only hesitated because my opponent was someone who doesn't crave battle. Even if it wasn't for you, I would have returned for the slaughter. His pupils glowed red, his eyes filled with resentment and hatred. I'm loyal to the Empire and the Emperor because they recognized my talent. The Empire's enemies are my enemies. Eiley remained silent in response to Luca's words that you're no exception, Eiley. Suddenly, the corners of Eiley's lips curled into a confident, satisfied smile. He unexpectedly jumped from the rooftop, leaving behind a teasing remark, liar. Eiley pointed at himself, speaking to Luca with utter confidence. If your obedience to the Empire truly went beyond mere loyalty, you would have tried to kill me already. He strolled forward, not forgetting to offer a parting piece of advice. Don't push yourself too hard, Luca. Luca gritted his teeth, clicking his tongue and muttering, "Idiot." He felt a flicker of worry and fear seeing Eiley like this. "At this rate, you'll die." During our third-year training mission, a reconnaissance mission in the uninhabited neutral zone, the setting sun painted the sky red, illuminating the surrounding landscape. Eiley's prosthetic hand touched a stone tablet, his voice brimming with excitement. "This is a mysterious relic." Small, intermittent electromagnetic currents appeared, further fueling his enthusiasm. "There's an energy reaction, even though this place is millions of years old." Eiley's pale blue eyes shone with a barely concealed brilliance. He glanced at Luca and the others, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Isn't this amazing?" "Luca, there were civilizations that explored planets even before our humankind existed." Lucas stared at Eiley's unrestrained enthusiasm, thinking, "I drew the line," but he just crossed it without hesitation. Finally, he had intervened. "Don't be careless, Eiley. The reconnaissance mission is part of the training exercise. If we encounter another force out here, we'll have to fight." Eiley paid no attention to the consequences, blithely rubbing his cheek against the stone tablet. "Even if we don't win, I'm sure someone from the Royal Guard will come to help us." Luca bit his lower lip, his frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Suddenly, another voice spoke up from within the squad. "The present exists because of the past, and those traces allow us to predict the future." The silver-haired youth who spoke was a new recruit of the Royal Guard, Lazaman. Thinking in that direction, it's reasonable for people to be interested in history. Luca glanced at him, silently assessing him. Lazaman, his family isn't as prominent as Katika, but he still comes from a respected family. Lazaman smiled and asked, "May I ask you something, Luca?" He paused for a moment, then dropped a bombshell that "I think I like you." "Are you seeing anyone?" Luca's skin crawled, and he immediately adopted a defensive stance. "If you come any closer, I'll consider you a threat." Lazaman chuckled, his tone conciliatory. "No need to be so scared." He straightened up, scratching his head and laughing at Luca's bristling reaction. "If you were still single, I was going to introduce you to my sister." Luca immediately clarified his status, that "I'm an orphan." However, this didn't seem to bother Lazaman. "Whether you're from an orphanage or nobility, there's a good chance you'll be my superior." Seeing that Luca remained unmoved, Lazaman pressed further. "Think about it. My sister is quite cute." Eiley suddenly approached Luca with an amused expression. "That you're popular, huh?" Luca's face darkened, and he muttered, "Shut up." Suddenly, Luca's electronic eye reacted. It wasn't just him. Eiley reacted similarly. Helmets materialized quickly. Luca calmly ordered everyone on the team. Biosigns detected. Eiley's group, find cover and provide support from the rear. Lazaman and I will take the front. A pale blue light shone from a spot not far away, reflecting off his jet black mechanical mask. Seeing the strange sight accompanied by a mysterious figure made him curious. Something's up ahead. The cube floating in midair suddenly glowed brightly. Clad head to toe in black armor, he looked up at it pensively. Luca's pupils immediately turned crimson. He cursed under his breath, "Damn it." The light illuminating the other person's silver-white armor made him quickly realize this person's identity, a Kozite knight. Suddenly, the figure turned their head, light flashing on the visor of their helmet. This startled both him and Lazaman, who were secretly observing from behind a tree. The knight extended a hand, revealing a sickle with a sharp, cold tip. Luca reacted in a panic, shouting, "Run," he yelled, his face filled with fear, trying to protect his teammate's life. Go. However, at that very moment, a brilliant flash of light erupted. In an instant, the sickle left the knight's hand, flying straight towards Lazaman, taking his life. Blood sprayed from the wound, as if in slow motion before Luca's eyes. A loud heartbeat echoed in his chest, his face completely pale. Lazaman. The knight remained motionless, their entire body radiating a terrifyingly powerful aura. A gleaming spear suddenly appeared, embedding itself into the stone slab behind them. A pure and powerful pale blue light emanated from the spear's shaft. The residual light from the spear slowly spread through the air in front of Luca, following the weapon's trajectory. The Kozite knight's hand still held traces of that holy power. Suddenly, the spear returned to the knight's hand. Luca glanced down at Lazaman's trembling body. He remembered how just minutes ago, Lazaman had been excitedly talking to him. "I was going to introduce you to my sister if you weren't seeing anyone." Sweat dripped continuously from Luca's face beneath his helmet. The scene made him think, "I just saw the spear flash, but Lazaman's upper body is gone." Incessant, rigid error messages rang out, making Luca even more anxious. "Damn it, mechanical eye activate." Despite the barrage of system error notifications, he persisted in trying to determine the trajectory of the knight's attack. "I have to calculate the spear's trajectory at all costs." Suddenly, a gunshot rang out in the forest. The knight quickly used their shield to block the incoming rounds. Eiley and two others rushed in from behind to provide support, calling out, "Luca, focus!" His voice snapped Luca out of his panic. Don't just stand there. Attack now. A bead of sweat rolled down Luca's cheek. Iloi, he took a deep breath, telling himself, no, I have to. The spear powerfully grazed his helmet. Bypassing the sword, he'd try to block it with a little bit what? No good. He barely managed to dodge. Finding a blind spot, Luca ensured the spear only shattered half of his mask, grazing his hair and cheek, drawing blood. As time ticked on, the tension doubled. The knight's hand glowed once more. The spearhead abruptly changed direction, turning to attack Luca from behind. By the time he realized it, the spear point was already close to his neck. In his eyes, only the brilliant light of the spear remained. Thoughts swirled chaotically in his mind. Am I going to die? There's no way I can survive this fight against that monster for even a few more seconds. Luca's mind flashed back to Hemilius's training and warnings. Rookie, you're like a pig realizing it's at the slaughterhouse. The man had said, his eyes bloodshot, his voice stern. Turning your back on the enemy is a bullet to the head. If the enemy swings their sword, you swing yours. The Royal Guard doesn't need weaklings. Now, Luca gritted his teeth, determined to survive this desperate situation. His feet shifted, thoughts racing faster than light. Before the knight could move, this time without hesitation, Luca swung his sword once more. He finally managed to deflect the spear, hurtling towards him with terrifying speed. I have to attack first. The spear vibrated intensely, the power surrounding it, shattering. As the clock ticked over to the next minute, a large explosion erupted, causing Iloi to cry out in alarm. Luca! The spear spun in the air for a moment before finally plunging into the ground, just 30 seconds past the 5-minute mark. Luca's cloak was now tattered, his helmet gone. Looking down at his unnaturally bent prosthetic finger, Luca thought, my hand is useless, but I blocked it. He gritted his teeth, staring at his opponent. Prepare for the next attack. The knight gripped the hilt of his sword, seemingly intending to use it for his next attack. In an instant, as he drew his sword, a myriad of identical blades left the scabbard. Luca barely managed to dodge the deadly attack. However, his comrades behind him weren't so lucky. 2 of Iloi's followers were mercilessly cut down by the blades. Even Iloi lost an ear, having failed to dodge in time. Panic filled his eyes, impossible to conceal. Iloi, Luca thought in surprise. He ignored me. Suddenly, the knight pushed off the ground with incredible speed, rushing towards Luca like a gust of wind, intending to finish him off in one blow. Cold sweat poured down Luca's face, betraying his fear. Then his eyes turned red, his teeth clenched. Luca used the last of his energy to activate the boosters in his boots, preparing for a head-on confrontation with the knight. A moment of silence fell over the vast forest. A mysterious figure stepped back, the faint sound of boots against grass barely audible. Then, the energy in the boot boosters charged, finally releasing, propelling the figure forward. The energy boosters on the armor worked at full capacity, sending the cloak billowing in the wind. The figure sped through the forest, its destination unknown. The figure that had been watching Luca's team shot through the forest like an arrow loose from a bow, until they saw the light at the end of the path. I'm going. He charged even faster than before, his energy boosters growing larger. The overseer nimbly dodged between the thick tree trunks, until he saw Luca and the Kozite knight about to clash. The overseer didn't say a word, just charged straight towards them. Luca and the knight were both on the verge of unleashing their finishing blows. The overseer's large mechanical hand suddenly grabbed the knight's head. Luca, surprised, stopped his attack and watched. The overseer, like a ballistic missile, held the knight's head firmly and slammed his face into the ground with a powerful thud. Then, he used his boosters again and shot off. The knight's face was dragged across the ground, leaving a long trail. Suddenly, the overseer pulled out a gun hidden within his armor. Just as he was about to fire, the knight grabbed his sword to counterattack. In that unexpected moment, the overseer decisively knocked the sword away, grabbed the knight by the scruff of his neck, and resolutely headed towards the stone tablet from earlier. The overseer strained, his eyes flashing a powerful red light. After a resounding crash and a brilliant flash of light, he slammed the knight directly into the stone tablet. Luca, from his position, watched the forest in utter silence, panting, sweat, and dirt mixing on his young face. Thick dust and smoke enveloped the dense forest like a hazy fog. Then, the overseer's dark silhouette emerged, his eyes glowing red. He slowly approached with a dignified and confident air. Finally, the setting sun glinted off his dark helmet. Luca, finally able to relax, let out a resounding cry. I'm saved. A gentle breeze rustled past, billowing the overseer's crimson cape. The Kozite knight slowly planted his sword in the ground and struggled to his feet. The overseer calmly turned to face him. Visible cracks now lined the knight's helmet. In the still air, Only a strong gust of wind blew between the overseer and the knight. The knight struggled to stand, leaning on his sword for support. In stark contrast, the overseer stood tall and imposing. Suddenly, he reached behind his back and slowly drew another weapon. On the overseer's arm was a large shield, accompanied by a jet-black axe. Luca quietly observed them from afar. Still trying to catch his breath, he anxiously followed the fight. A royal guard equipped with the weapons of the Empire and the legions, against a Kozite holy knight wielding power. Finally, the knight swung his sword. Both charged at each other simultaneously with incredible speed. A red light flashed in the overseer's eyes. The blinding light and deafening sound of their clash made Luca, watching from afar, wonder who was stronger. Shards of armor flew as they clashed, each focused solely on the other. Suddenly, a powerful force pressed down on the knight. Not only him, but the overseer also felt the same pressure. The two figures vanished into thin air in the middle of the clearing, leaving only a gentle breeze in their wake. But mere seconds later, they reappeared, sparks from their clash scattering everywhere. Their relentless duel continued, moving from the ground to the air. Finally, a bright flash accompanied by a loud explosion lit up a corner of the forest. A series of resounding crashes followed. The overseer and the Kozite knight, still locked in combat, returned to their original position in the clearing. The overseer swung his axe, sending sparks flying as it clashed against the knight's sword. Luca, watching from the sidelines, gritted his teeth, straining to follow their movements. They were so fast that his eyes could barely keep up with their weapons. This was the battle of a royal guard. Seeing the knight holding his own against the overseer, Luca thought to himself, "Please, the royal guard has to win." Suddenly, the axe head detached from its handle, propelled by an energy blast. It exploded, creating a powerful shockwave that slammed into the knight. Once again, the overseer grabbed him by the head. His powerful mechanical hand forced the knight back, giving him no time to react. In an instant, a nuclear energy source activated, increasing the pressure on the knight's helmet. A terrifying heat, laced with clear, killing intent, radiated outwards. The overseer's eyes glowed red, the setting sun painting his black armor gold. He tightened his grip, and a soft crack echoed as the joints in the knight's neck protested. However, the knight's fingers suddenly moved. The spear embedded in the ground behind Luca suddenly glowed. He spun around in alarm, fear gripping his heart. In that moment, a thought flashed through Luca's mind. The royal guard was unaware of the spear's speed and power. He wouldn't be able to react in time. Luca gritted his teeth, cursing under his breath. Damn it, if the royal guard dies, I'm dead too. He slammed his foot into the ground, determination hardening his resolve. I have to do something. The spear began to vibrate, and small fragments of light appeared. In a heartbeat, it shot out of the ground. The spear's speed and brilliance were like a lightning strike. At the same time, Luca swung his leg, trying to kick it away. Even with his half-mechanical leg already mangled, he hoped for a miracle. Please. He looked towards the overseer, praying silently. Block it. The overseer finally noticed the spear's light approaching him. But a hand reached out and grabbed the spear's tip, stopping it. Despite being held by the overseer, the knight managed to grip the spear. The light on the spear grew brighter and more intense. The overseer quickly channeled all his strength into his arm. Finally, he decisively swung his other fist. The knight took a direct hit and crashed to the ground. A blast of air and a deafening explosion shook the forest. Luca lay sprawled on the ground, debris from the explosion raining down around him. Gasping for breath, Luca wondered what had happened after his actions. What just happened? Who won? He tried to open his eyes, but exhaustion deep in his bones forced them shut. If the Kozite knight survived, I won't be able to. Through the thick dust cloud, footsteps slowly approached. His thoughts raced even after the footsteps stopped. Please, please, please. A calm, gentle voice spoke. Well done, recruit. The overseer's voice held a note of concern that we took down the knight thanks to you. Are you injured in the abdomen? Luca didn't open his eyes, only exhaled deeply. I was injured dodging his power slash. A mechanical hand extended towards him solicitously. I'll support you. Just wait until we get back to base. Suddenly, Luca's eyes widened, beads of sweat trickling down his face. The overseer's form reminded him of information regarding the battle suit, the Legion, the full-body mechanical armor bestowed by the Empire upon the Royal Guard. By removing all unnecessary, weak parts of the body not needed for combat, it transformed a person into the ultimate weapon. His eyes now reflected that magnificent image. Every recruit dreamed of obtaining a Legion, as it was proof of being a Royal Guard. However, that beautiful image in the fading light would be perfect if the armor still had a head. After a long moment, his lips trembled as he spoke. You're alive, but you don't have a head. His question plunged the area into silence. Are you a machine or a human? The overseer, or rather, the talking machine, hesitated before speaking. My head. It frantically patted its neck, finding nothing. It's gone. It shrieked in terror. Lucas stared at the mechanical figure, panic rising in his eyes. Have I been striving to become a monster like this all this time? The emotions, difficult to feel through the hard black armor, slowly spread through his mind. So cold, my body hasn't stopped shaking. Even if I return, will I survive? He silently offered a final prayer for himself. This is the last moment I'll see. A pair of mechanical legs suddenly appeared before him, accompanied by a joyful voice. Luca, you're alive. Luca's weary voice slowly responded, Ailey, you survived. Ailey smiled slightly, clutching his injured arm. Not in the best shape, but he paused, glancing at the knight's corpse. What about the others? Luca calmly replied, besides us, everyone is dead. Ailey finally sat down beside him, sighing softly. How bad are your wounds? Luca whispered, I'll die soon, Ailey. A question, incongruous with the scene, appeared on Luca's lips. What are you going to do? His words made Ailey contemplative. Look, the life you've always dreamed of is right in front of you. Luca asked back, a little surprised. Isn't it towards Coat and Bellato? Luca slowly affirmed, yes, what you desire isn't in the Empire. Despite his worsening wounds, he continued to speak, that I'm all right. If you want, go. These words came straight from his heart, a genuine desire for his friend's happiness. Reinforcements will arrive soon. Once they do, we have to return to the Empire. Go, Ailey. Ailey sat motionless, silent, not saying a word. Finally, he slowly rose from the ground. Luca watched him go, his own body on the verge of slipping into a deep coma. As he watched Ailey's figure disappear into the twilight, a quiet joy filled his heart. He came from a wealthy and prestigious family, with the skills to match. The people of the Empire would be envious of him. The memory of the night they sat together, gazing at the starry sky, made his heart ache. I can't understand you, Ailey. Luca had turned to look at him, then, slowly observing his friend. But, he thought, your eyes at that moment, they sparkled like 1,000 stars. When you talked about your dreams, that's when you shone the brightest. As his last thoughts faded, Luca fell into unconsciousness.so. I want you to live the way you want. From the bottom of my heart. Suddenly, a familiar touch and a small cloth pressed against his cheek. Luca struggled to open his eyes. Ailey was now beside him. What are you doing, you idiot? He managed a weak smile, his tone laced with their usual playful banter. You look like you're actually going to die. The relief on Ailey's face was evident. Luca sighed softly. If there's no way I could live with myself if I let you die like this. Ailey's clear voice mingled with the sound of the approaching reinforcement aircraft. What? Idiot. Under the sterile white light of a room, a hand slowly opened a book titled Starship Infiltration. Luca, his limbs replaced with mechanical prosthetics, stared pensively at the pages. A sense of unease and unspoken thoughts weighed heavily on his mind. Suddenly, Ailey approached from behind, his voice cheerful. Checking out the new parts? He pointed to a model in the book, excitedly explaining, I recommend the F-24 Zeos model. It has a fast adaptation rate, so you'll be back on the battlefield in no time. And the quality is definitely better than the old one. Lucas set the book aside, glancing at him with a slight complaint. Ailey, don't just sneak up on me like that. Ailey scratched his head and grinned. Surprised, they sat together, waiting their turn. After returning to the Empire and completing treatment, I was called in for questioning by multiple departments. The memory of the 4 who had perished during the reconnaissance mission weighed heavily on his mind. They want to investigate the incident with the 3 recruits and 1 royal guard being slaughtered, the encounter with the Gozan Knight. Luca pondered for a long moment, curious about the situation he was facing at AT first. I thought that was the reason, but I was actually called in for something else. Suddenly, Ailey's voice broke the silence. Oh yeah, did you hear? There's news of a relic found in the area we were just at. He paused, then continued. They're arguing over who gets ownership. The thought of the mysterious cube made him break out in a cold sweat. I knew it. That floating cube is the reason. Behind him. Then he glanced at Ailey and lightly asked, so which side is retrieving that artifact? He didn't beat around the bush, getting straight to the point. I heard they're setting up a specialized retrieval team to handle this. He paused for a few seconds, his following words even quieter than before. If the Holy Alliance refuses to hand over the relic and artifact, there's a high chance of war. These thoughts gradually invaded his young, still developing mind. If the Empire wants to fight Coat, Bellato will benefit just by watching. He lowered his head, slowly explaining the events of the past few days. That's why there have been small-scale battles to minimize casualties. But Luca didn't care about these side issues. I'm not very interested in politics. Just following orders and fighting is enough. And then a cold statement slipped through his teeth. That's the nature of being a member of the Royal Guard. As he said that, the image of the headless, jet-black armor flashed through his mind. Royal Guard. He recalled Hemilius's cold gaze, the feeling still fresh. After reporting, one member was executed because of that incident. The commander summarized it as a hallucination caused by residual signal interference. However, that made Luca wonder, was it really just residual interference? No, he still reacted to words even after death. How could it be a hallucination? He looked up at the space in front of him, feeling somewhat relieved. There are still many unanswered questions. His eyes glanced at the book placed on the chair, lost in thought for a moment. But I'm not stupid enough to dig for information that headquarters refuses to disclose. Scene changed. Sunlight shone gently on the lush green grass. There was a luxurious spot, almost out of place within the new recruit training facility. Lucas sat facing a young girl in the visiting room, where new recruits met with family and friends. He remained silent, just observing the person sitting opposite him. Growing up in the orphanage, I never really thought about this before. His gaze rested on Lien Zaman, Lei's younger sister. So I never thought anyone would come looking for me. He started to pay attention to her appearance. Curiosity piqued. Lien Zaman, why does Lei's sister want to see me? Cold sweat suddenly broke out on Luca's forehead as he thought about the reason for this meeting. Don't tell me. She's planning to interrogate me about Lei's death since I was the team leader at the time? Suddenly, her soft voice broke the silence. If you think I came here with hostility, don't worry. As soon as my brother joined the Royal Guard, our family knew we'd receive bad news someday. She gently held the still hot coffee cup, her tone unhurried. Today, I came here to see you, Luca. Lien Zaman paused for a moment and continued speaking with a calm demeanor. My brother mentioned you a lot. He said you were a talented and outstanding friend. He even asked if I was interested in meeting you. She lowered her head slightly, the steam rising from the coffee cup gently hiding her expression. I think you understand. I don't want to be too formal because of what happened. Lucas stared at her for a moment, a hint of confusion in his eyes. It seems you really wanted to meet me. Lien Zaman's hands gently intertwined, her tone slow and deliberate. You don't want to? You immediately answered my question. You don't know anything about me, Lien. My sister seemingly hasn't given up on Luca yet, so why don't we get to know each other now? I'm a little curious, she asked in return. Why you? Lien Zaman spoke calmly. Isn't my deceased brother's wish enough of a reason? The next words that left her mouth didn't seem to match her small frame, that I believe you'll also benefit greatly from this. So much so that everyone will be envious. Her words did indeed give Luca pause. Yes, it was a difficult offer to refuse. For someone like him to have the opportunity to marry a woman of such high standing was like a gold nugget falling from the sky. I'm starting to waver. He thought, considering his next decision, that I've done everything to get where I am now. Marrying into the nobility would be a huge step forward. What could be better? His brow furrowed slightly, a hint of worry in his eyes. However, nothing is ever that easy. To Luca, the temptations behind Lien Zaman were like demonic hands trying to pull him into the abyss. So I'm quite apprehensive. Then he slowly answered, I must decline. This made her eyes widen in surprise. What? Luca didn't wait for her to react before immediately standing up. Goodbye. His heart was now filled with an unspoken sadness and contemplation. I used to think Eiley was foolish for giving up such a good family to escape the Empire, but I never thought I'd be stupid enough to make decisions based on emotions. He walked away with his back straight, never looking back. A noble like Lien would surely see this as an insult. He hoped no trouble would come of this. Suddenly, Lien Zaman's small hand reached out. In front of him. To Luca's surprise, her hand grasped as tightly. Her soft voice rose, tinged with hesitation. I was too hasty. Her cheeks flushed. Although her tone was timid, it carried a certain determination. Then let's start as friends. He frowned, glancing at Lien Zaman, seemingly a little confused about matters of the heart. That's not what I meant. She suddenly turned and ran, leaving Luca with a bewildered expression. Wait a minute, I'll be right back. He looked down at the hand she had just held, lost in thought. Watching Lien Zaman's small figure running away, he sighed softly. This is going to be difficult. At Axarutan, the gymnasium was deserted, with only two figures present. Luca and Kin and stood facing each other in a small arena without saying a word. Kinnan, a member of the royal forces and a combat instructor, chuckled softly. Didn't think you'd come to see me. Luca, while warming up his limbs, replied in a serious tone, Yes, I want to learn a little from you. Kinnan spoke calmly, instructing him, If at combat, I have nothing left to teach you. Among the new recruits I've taught, few have surpassed you. Hearing these words, Luca immediately grasped the main issue. There were still people stronger than him. He frowned slightly, but didn't abandon his goal. I'm still not satisfied with my current strength, sir. Kinnan chuckled, scratching his neck. There's no need to push yourself so hard. Luca looked at him, feeling a certain respect for his instructor. The combat instructor for new recruits, Kinnan, was strong, but not as overwhelming as the other instructors here. He looked down at his mechanical arm, thinking to himself, unlike the other instructors in the Royal Guards, he uses low-powered civilian parts compared to my new ones. I think they're stronger than what he uses. However, my only weakness is that I'm not fully equipped yet, so I'm much weaker overall. The thought strengthened Luca's resolve. If I can't even face him, I won't stand a chance against a strong opponent like a Kozite Knight. He clenched his fist and calmly replied, "Thank you for the opportunity, sir." Kinnan closed his eyes and sighed heavily. "You didn't really give me a choice." Immediately after his words, Luca, like a machine fresh off the maintenance line, shot forward. "Let's go." Kinnan calmly blocked and evaded Luca's attacks. "Are you trying out your new parts?" Luca didn't answer, continuing his serious assault. Even though he's a retired Royal Guard, I'm sure he doesn't even consider these attacks a threat. Luca unleashed a furious barrage of punches at Kin and without pause. His feet pivoted, carefully calculating his next moves. "I'll jump in to close the distance." His jaw clenched, determination burning in his eyes as he prepared his finishing move. Luca's hand darted towards Kin-An's arm. His fingers slipped inside Kin-An's sleeve in an instant. He grabbed hold and twisted, attempting to lock his opponent's arm. Without waiting for a reaction, Luca decisively launched his next punch. Even as his fist neared, Kinnan remained calm, watching without flinching. "I've won." Kin-An's eyes were tranquil, seemingly without any intention of dodging. Suddenly, a blue light flashed within his gentle reddish-brown eyes. Then, Luca, who was standing firmly on the ground, was abruptly thrown into the air. His eyes widened in complete confusion. Despite being airborne, he stared at his instructor. "Why am I flying?" Luca quickly reacted to the sudden change, his hand instinctively reaching for the ground to regain his balance. He launched himself towards Kin again with frightening speed. "Don't think you can stop my attack with that." He raised a leg, aiming a direct kick at Kinnan's face. But Kinnan was a step ahead, completely seizing Luca's ankle. And just like that, Luca was thrown again, his back slamming against the ground several times as he skidded towards the edge of the training area. A look of bewildered shock remained on the young man's face. "What the hell?" Kinnan slowly walked closer to him, his voice gentle as he spoke. "Not only could you not gauge the strength of your opponent, but you also dared to lose focus mid-fight." His imposing figure reflected in Luca's vision, accompanied by a reproachful tone that "What's the rush, Luca?" He ignored Kin-An's question, still shocked and disoriented from a fall. What just happened? Luca recalled the moment he was about to punch Kinnan. From his perspective, the first attack should have landed squarely on Kin-An's chin. He continued to replay the feeling of his fist about to connect. However, the moment Kinnan touched his hand, the moment Kin-An's hand reached out and grasped his whole body suddenly froze. Then came the inexplicable fall. His body swayed, out of control. Luca wondered, puzzled. It wasn't exactly like the kinetic energy he directed at Kin and had been reflected back at him. Unable to find a suitable explanation, Luca frankly asked, "What was that just now?" Kinnan nodded in reply that a self-defense technique of mine. Immediately, he sprang to his feet, his eyes filled with determination. "Maybe I can learn that," he started to say, but then he saw something that made him stop short. It turned out that after blocking the attack, Kin-An's hand was swollen and trembling. He raised his hands, asking mockingly, "Even after seeing me like this?" Immediately after, drops of blood began to fall steadily onto the floor. Kinnan spoke a truth. Every shortcut has a price. In the training room, only the two of them remained, Luca and Kinnan, facing each other on the training ground. Suddenly, Kinnan asked, "Luca, what did you learn from that match?" He answered honestly, "It felt like I was swept away. My body moved on its own, out of control." Recognizing the validity of his feelings, Kinnan began to explain Akavitama, commonly known as Aki's fighting method. Hearing this name, Luca couldn't help but be surprised. He asked curiously, "Isn't that a name commonly used by thugs?" "What you just showed me was impressive, almost on par with military-grade techniques." Kinnan continued to explain. They considered incorporating it, but Akavitama has 3 problems. Luca curiously guessed, "Is it difficult to learn?" Hearing this answer, Kinnan couldn't help but praise him. "You're as smart as they say." Still wanting to stimulate his thinking, Kinnan probed, "What about the other 2 problems?" Luca thought hard and replied, "What my brain just experienced must be a side effect." Kinnan was completely satisfied with his deductive abilities. "Exactly," he affirmed. He added with certainty, "As for the last reason, you can't know that." Unwilling to give up, Luca pleaded, "If I can become stronger, I'm willing to bear those risks." Kinnan stopped sitting, pushing himself up with his hands. As he stood, he spoke words of refusal, that that's not something you can decide. "You're the Empire's property. Do you know how much they've invested in you?" But Luca wasn't satisfied with this answer, quickly jumping to his feet after Kinnan, urgently calling out, "Sir." Kinnan didn't want to hear any more and turned away, coldly interrupting him. Answer me. He challenged. Training in Aki's fighting method will definitely cause brain problems. Can you swear you'll stop if that happens? Hearing these words, he froze, lost in thought. Looking at Kin, Anne's departing back, he thought, if I lie, he'll know. Today, yearning to learn this secret technique, he persistently tried to persuade him. I can't guarantee it, but I'll do my best to avoid using it. Kinnan paused upon hearing this, stopping in his tracks. A moment later, he turned back and clapped Luca hard on the shoulder, cheerfully saying, I like your honesty. Luca was surprised by his sudden action. But suddenly, Kinnan kicked Luca hard in the leg. Luca, caught off guard by the unexpected attack, could only watch in stunned silence. Without letting him dwell on his shock, Kinnan threw him towards the corner of the training ground. He brought a hand to his mouth, chuckling, from now on, always anticipate every attack from me. That way, you'll always be prepared for every situation. Luca understood the message in his words, rubbing his head sheepishly, stammering, so that means? Seeing his bewildered expression, Kinnan turned and walked away. I like quick learners. Scene change. Eiley suddenly came across him, curiously asking, Luca, aren't you sleeping? Indeed, Luca stood before him with dark circles under his eyes, drenched in sweat. Not wanting too many people know about his training, he prevaricated, I'm a bit busy. Luca thought to himself, I've been sparring with Kinnan every day for a month now. He recalled Kin Anne's warning. If you're not present to learn from observation, then even if I tell you, you still won't understand. Lost in thought, he continued, he hasn't taught me any specific moves. Kinnan wants me to observe and learn for myself. Remembering those exhausting training sessions, Luca couldn't help but sigh. Aki fighting style is very different from what I've been taught. Most other methods focus on learning a specific skill and honing it, but the Aki fighting style seeks to maximize the use of one's existing skills. After those sessions, Luca came to a conclusion it's a superior combat technique, using all kinds of weapons to create the most effective fighting method in mere seconds. It's a way of using the mind. Breaking from his thoughts, he turned to Eiley. Eiley, how's your mission going? He complained, boring. Just eliminating faulty androids. As he walked, he continued to grumble discontentedly. All the missions I've been getting lately are like this. Child's play. Luca asked curiously, Kojite must be cautious because of the last incident. So the commander isn't here, huh? Mentioning this, Eiley hesitated. That's not it. I've heard some things from my family. Luca, hearing this, guessed that the matter wasn't simple. If the commander is involved, wouldn't that be rebellion? Eiley confirmed exactly. Luca's eyes widened in alarm. Eiley spoke of the matter with unease. I don't know the details, but a group of people have plotted a rebellion. Luca listened intently. Luca was furious, complaining we're at war with the Kozite Alliance. And now, there are these idiots starting a civil war? How foolish. But suddenly, Eiley said, but if you only see this issue as foolishness, you're missing the point. Luca was taken aback by this assessment. Unable to tolerate the perceived insult, Luca quickly shoved Eiley against the wall behind him, preparing to strike, causing him to cry out in pain. Grabbing Eiley's collar, Luca glared at him fiercely, his voice a low growl. I'm warning you, Eiley. I can overlook you wanted to leave the Empire, but if you want to become my enemy, I won't let you get away with it. Faced with Luca's anger, Eiley, pale with fear, explained that he had also passed the aptitude test to become a royal guard, and that he just thought the idea was important to the Empire. Then, looking Luca straight in the eye, he said provocatively, calm down, Luca. Luca let go of Eiley, turned his back, and warned him coldly, don't say things that could arouse suspicion. I don't want to see your name on the list of rebels. Released, Eiley doubled over in pain, quickly tried to appease Luca. I know. I only said it in front of you. Luca remained silent in response to Eiley's attitude. Eiley, flustered, changed the subject. Cheer up, Luca. I'll get you some good food this weekend. Luca, wanting to avoid Eiley further, made an excuse to leave that I have something to do. Don't tell me what to do. You're annoying. Seeing Luca walk away, Eiley, flustered, chased after him. I asked about a girl? Luca asked, exasperated, aren't you coming? Scene change outside, in the lower district of Akertan. Kinnan was strolling with Luca when he suddenly spoke. It's been a while, hasn't it? This place is familiar to both of us, those who came from the slums. Luca stared straight ahead, confessing to Kinnan, the day I became a recruit, I thought I'd never have to return to the lower district. I didn't want to breathe the same air as those idiots. Kinnan teased him good-naturedly. Well, you're the type who want to climb high, aren't you? By the roadside, two thugs appear to be arguing. The blonde one yelled, hey, get out of the way. The other retorted, you're the one blocking the way, blockhead. Just as Luca passed by, he thought to himself, I can't believe he brought me. Here, he surveyed the surroundings, unable to help but criticize. The air in the lower district is putrid. The city is powered by Mama, which lies beneath. All the unfiltered waste and gas are discharged into the lower district. Recalling his childhood, when he always had to breathe this air, Luca remembered his biggest wish back then. I wanted to get out of here, otherwise, I'd live my whole life as a failure. Suddenly, as if seeing something, his face darkened, and he cursed, "Damn it." Kinnan, leading the way into a small alley, told him, "This way, Luca." Luca was surprised to see him go in there. Passing through the alley, they seemed to enter another hidden place. Luca looked around and asked, "Is this the black market?" Kinnan seemed surprised first time, but Luca told him about the rumors. Some kids never return after curiously coming here. Observing Kinnan's ease, Luca thought to himself, Master Kinnan really knows the layout of the lower district well. Someone who's been in the Royal Guard for decades knows this place better than I do. He remembered Kinnan's instructions that he told me to use prosthetic arms and legs with low energy output when coming here. He unconsciously raised his hand, looking puzzled. What is he planning? Suddenly, Kinnan signaled from up ahead, "Get ready," Luca surprising him. Ahead of them was a brightly lit doorway with 2 guards. When they arrived, a guard stopped them. "Halt. The entrance for spectators is that way." Kinnan said with a smile, "I need to speak with the manager of this establishment." The guard asked, "Do you know our boss, Aleph?" Kinnan remained calm. "Not exactly. I just want to meet him." Hearing this, the guard pulled out his gun and pointed it at Kinnan's head, cursing, "Are you crazy?" But Kinnan wasn't afraid. He looked at the man with a penetrating gaze and a sly grin. Immediately, Luca rushed in to attack him. The angry man gritted his teeth, but couldn't do anything. Suddenly, the guard next to him made a move, but a flash of lightning-fast movement startled him, making him grind his teeth in fear. The guard Luca had defeated lay groaning on the ground. Luca pinned the man's arm and pointed his gun at the other guard who was still standing. With a cold expression, he ordered him not to move. Despite his anger, the standing guard was forced to surrender to the gun barrel. The guards helped each other into the staff room. Luca asked Kinnan curiously, "If I hadn't been fast enough, what were you planning to do?" Kinnan responded vaguely, "Well, I would have found another way." He looked around the place with curiosity. "What is this place anyway?" The guards helped each other into the staff room. Luca asked him curiously, "If I hadn't been fast enough, what were you planning to do?" Kinnan responded vaguely, "Well, I would have found another way." He observed the place curiously. "What is this place anyway?" Kinnan said mysteriously, "The hottest place in the whole empire." Luca's curiosity grew. What? He grinned and turned back to Luca, the Roman arena. After making arrangements to meet Aleph, the two of them entered a secret room, guarded by the 2 gatekeepers from earlier. Inside the room, Aleph and Kinnan sat facing each other. Aleph sat regally, a cigarette in his hand, with 2 tough-looking henchmen behind him, staring intently at Luca and Kinnan. Kinnan didn't let the silence linger. He made his proposal. "Put this kid in the matches," he said, gesturing towards Luca. Worried that Aleph might disagree, he added a concession. "No need to collect an entry fee. It doesn't matter if he dies in the fight." Hearing Kinnan's words, Luca finally understood his earlier instructions. So that was why he told him to wear low-powered prosthetic limbs. Aleph took a drag of his cigarette. Then, he abruptly flicked the lit cigarette towards Kinnan. Neither of them seemed surprised by this action. Luca reached out and caught Aleph's cigarette. Aleph's 2 henchmen immediately aimed their guns at them. Aleph sneered arrogantly. "Looks like you've misunderstood something. I didn't bring you here to do whatever you want. I called you here to fight, not to make a mess." Luca found his words grating, silently scoffing. It was all bluster. If he'd intended to shoot, he would have done it already instead of sitting here talking. Luca assessed the situation. There were 3 men aiming guns at them in the room. And it wasn't just inside. He remembered the exterior. Outside the door, there were 2 armed guards. He finally concluded, the first thing I need to do now is... Then followed a series of simulations in Luca's mind. He would use the power of his leg to attack. Luca kicked the table towards Aleph and his men. They would be surprised by his action. The 2 henchmen would move to attack. Then he would launch an attack at one of the henchmen. The others, seeing this, would rush Luca. But he would gain the upper hand by taking Aleph hostage, while holding him in a chokehold. I'll point the gun at them. Immediately afterward, I'll shoot those 2 underlings. Then, the 2 guards at the door will hear the commotion and rush in. Luca will ambush them from the ceiling. Without hesitation, shoot those 2 down. Pausing the simulation, I silently assess. It seems the simulation is complete. Kinnan, dissatisfied with Aleph's flustered appearance, asked, "Where's the previous owner?" Aleph, surprised, asked back, "You know Toza?" Due to being caught manipulating match results, he was dealt with. Kinnan calmly continued to question Aleph. "So, you slaughtered Toza and took over this arena, right? This arena must be a very profitable business, huh? He continued, although Toza and I were friends, I can't blame you. He did the same thing to gain control of this arena. In this area, such actions are quite normal. Hearing Qin An's words, Aleph immediately stood up, pointed his gun at Qin An's head, and interrogated him. Who are you? How do you know all this? Suddenly, Qin An said, calm down, Aleph. His eyes looked up, fearless, threatening Aleph. If you don't want to follow in Toza's footsteps, you'd better behave. Seeing the defiant look on Qin An's face, Aleph gritted his teeth in anger. Aleph sat back down, cursing, damn it, and gestured for his men to lower their guns. He lifted his glasses and softly probed, are you sure that just by letting that kid into the arena, everything will be settled? It turned out Aleph's glasses weren't ordinary. They could analyze a person's fighting ability. They were analyzing Luca. After gathering the data, he commented, he doesn't look like a fighter. His body is just ordinary flesh and blood. I can guess that if he starts a match, he'll probably die instantly. Aleph craftily negotiated with Qin An. Even so, I can let him participate in the fight, but in return, I must have some benefit, right? Naturally, Qin An also had terms, probing, I know where Toza's assets are hidden. You know Toza was quite wealthy, right? Intrigued by this offer, Aleph brought his glasses closer to his eyes, curiously looking at Qin An. So, what do you know? I'm becoming more and more curious about you. Qin An chuckled, humbly replying, I'm just a ghost trying to forget the past. There's nothing worth mentioning. Aleph enthusiastically invited him. If you plan to watch the fight, I have a VIP area with all sorts of services. But Qin An wasn't very interested in these things, focusing only on his purpose for being there, urging, all right, bring the drinks. As for this kid, find the strongest opponent for him. No need to go easy on him. Luca was completely impressed by Qin An's moves, thinking, I'll definitely learn a lot after this fight. He couldn't help but admire Qin An's abilities. In the current situation, with just mental pressure, he had managed to control everything here according to his will, an ability Luca felt he could hardly learn from Qin An. A while later, in the fighter's waiting room, the loudspeaker announced, the fight will begin in 2 hours. Please be prepared. Go. Qin An and Luca were in this room. Luca wondered, asking Qin An what was so special about Toza's treasure that Aleph accepted all of his decisions. Qin An, busy investigating information about the opponent, honestly told Luca, of course, it's a massive fortune that could change his life. Luca looked at him questioningly. So, what's the point of you letting me participate in this battle? Qin An chuckled evasively. All right, just win, and we'll talk when you get back. He handed Luca a device, saying, this is your opponent. The device displayed, Gotzi, the steel fist. Luca picked up the device to look at Gotzi's information. Meanwhile, Qin An stood beside him, analyzing, the arena is full of fools who, for money and fame, recklessly modify their bodies to become stronger. This guy, at first glance, seems to be one of them. He's quite strong. Of course, with such body modifications, he won't live long. As Qin An spoke, Luca looked at the information, exclaiming, he really has modified his body a lot. Qin An cautioned, but be careful. One hit from him could be fatal. Remember what I said, understand? This is the most important principle of fighting techniques in this arena. Luca asked, puzzled, fighting principles. Qin An held up his prosthetic hand. Know how to utilize what you have. Luca looked and immediately understood what Qin An was implying. All right, I understand. Qin An explained, what you have, if you can master and control it skillfully, can lead to many unexpected things. Remembering Luca's previous matches, Qin An praised him. You have quite a lot of fighting potential. I noticed you from the time you deflected that bullet by predicting its trajectory. When you came to me asking to learn, I was quite surprised. With you, I can teach you many things. Luca was embarrassed by Qin An's praise. I'm not used to being praised like this. Qin An patted his shoulder. All right. Not wanting Luca to worry too much, he encouraged him, just fight well. The difficult battle is ahead. You need to be careful. Luca was nervous and afraid, not daring to look Qin An in the eye. A pitch-black space. Suddenly, a beam of light switched on, illuminating the fighting arena. The announcer was introducing the first match of today is the Steel Fist Gotzi versus a rookie. The crowd in the stands was excited. To heighten the tension, the announcer mocked Luca. I wonder if the kid will even last a second. This rookie, I hope his decision to fight was the right one. Otherwise, today will be his death anniversary. Having to hear these rude words before even entering the match, Luca coldly assessed, this looks difficult. Suddenly, people in the audience also yelled towards Luca. It's baffling. Doesn't want to live, but wants to die? What's the point? The crowd in the stands, like demons, jeered and cursed, could have died anywhere, but chose to die in the arena. What a waste. This is such a predictable match. I'm so excited. Ignoring those words, Luca remained resolute. Indeed, the fighting instinct and the thirst for bloodshed are primal human instincts. In this arena, the fights are unpredictable. Luca, fueled by adrenaline, felt a surge of excitement to show off. He thought, everyone here is probably eager to see me get crushed. Fine, I'll show them what real fighting looks like. He took off his jacket, a familiar thrill coursing through him. It's been a while since I've felt this rush, he mused. Luca looked up at the stand with disdain. How could I possibly lose to these bastards? The scene shifted to a young boy carrying a tray of food, looking rather inattentive. A voice echoed. Ever since I was little, I never knew what it meant to have a full meal. It was young Luca, his face vacant, his eyes hollow with helplessness. He continued. Those in charge would come to the orphanage with supplies twice a month, but half of it was sold off by the corrupt bastards running the place. So, hunger was our constant companion. That's how it was for us at the orphanage. It became clear that he was one of those unfortunate children resigned to his fate. Old books and belongings lay scattered on the ground as Luca lamented. Even though we were starving, we still had to do hard labor. Despite that, we diligently read any books we could get our hands on, even in those difficult circumstances. Along with training to get stronger, that's what I always focused on. Lost in thought, Luca was suddenly struck by a rock. It was thrown by a group of kids who asked, "Luca, what's wrong with you? Why waste your time on stuff like that?" Luca simply replied, "Because it's like a microcosm of society. If you're hungry, you can steal to eat." Hearing this, the kids clutched their bags tightly. In a flash, he had taken them all down. Luca thought to himself, survival of the fittest. I understand the rules of this world. The strong thrive, the weak are oppressed. The kids started crying. You're just a weakling like us in this second-rate orphanage. If you were stronger, you'd be in the first-rate orphanage. They yelled as they ran away that you're just a commoner. Don't act so tough. Luca just glared at them and returned to what he was doing. Chewing on a piece of stale bread, he mused, I never pay attention to the words of losers. The scene changed to Luca in a sharp uniform. When I was 12, I passed the entrance exam to become a candidate for the Royal Guard. By 15, I was officially a student at the academy. Luca asked, still don't get it, do you? If you don't try, you'll never escape this prison. The kids from before looked at him in astonishment. He continued, look at what I've done and strive to do the same. That's how you change your fate. His sharp gaze remained fixed ahead, ignoring the stairs. During my time at the academy, I buried all those painful memories of the orphanage. I thought I'd never return to that hellhole. Luca, now older, seemed more determined than ever. The scene changed again, showing him with his hands in his pockets, standing before his opponent. Gotsi was approaching, chanting his own name, Gotsi, Gotsi, Gotsi. He sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. A kid as my opponent? How amusing. Let's see how many seconds you last. Winning too easily isn't fun, but the money is. Contrary to Gotsi's arrogance, Luca calmly observed and deduced, this guy looks pretty strong. His face is full of confidence, certain of victory. Gotsi clasped his hands, ready to strike. Luca continued his analysis. His prosthetic limbs, though manufactured in different factories, have been synchronized. They all fit him perfectly. However, he's overused them in combat. The added enhancements have become a burden on his skeleton, causing his body to deteriorate. The joints and load-bearing capacity of his frame will soon collapse. I guess without painkillers, he'd be crippled, his body practically falling apart. Gotsi aggressively leaned down, close to Luca's face, and asked, what are you looking at, kid? Scared. Luca remained calm, observing. A body with so many protective combat enhancements is something many warriors crave. Gotsi offered, if you surrender, you can serve me. Luca's eyes crinkled with amusement. On the contrary, I think you'll be the one needing a caretaker after today, because you might become a cripple. Gotsi's pupils dilated with rage. His face contorted in fury at the insult. He turned his back. Fine, you're tough. Let's see who wins. Aleph, in the stands, watched everything unfold. He took the microphone and announced, all right, enough talk. Both contenders are in the arena. Let the battle begin. Let the match begin. Let's see if the young challenger will triumph or become Gotsi's next meal. Contrary to the excitement of the audience, Kinnan looked worried, his eyes fixed on the right side of the arena. The announcer declared, the bloodbath begins now. The crowd roared with anticipation. Luca carefully considered his options. I need to be careful. His punches are powerful. One hit could crush me. His attacks seem slower than usual, so I just need to observe closely. Gotsi lunged at him with a powerful fist, but Luca remained still, observing, not dodging. Gotsi slammed his fist into the ground for momentum, but Luca narrowly avoided it. Gotsi followed up with a near-fatal punch from his other hand, but Luca reacted quickly, kicking him directly in the head. Despite taking the full force of the attack, Gotsi seemed unaffected. He even laughed triumphantly at what's wrong. Scared? That punch was nothing to me. Luca seemed amused by the reaction, a sly smile spreading across his face. If he didn't have that super heavy armor, that one blow would have killed him. Luca jumped back 3 steps after the attack. He looked around, annoyed. This arena is too small. It's hard to dodge. Gotsi charged forward, unleashing a flurry of punches. Luca nimbly dodged each blow, but couldn't help but worry. Every attack he makes is lethal, but mine don't seem to hurt him. And the crowd is cheering for him. The audience, seeing Luca still standing, grew enraged. That kid's fast, but it's useless. Die quickly, so we can see the next match. Crush him, Gotsi. Luca was so tense that beads of sweat dotted his forehead. His current situation could be described as quite dire. What did his teacher want him to learn by bringing him here? He recalled Kin An's previous instructions. Remember what I've told you, understand? This is the most important principle of fighting technique in the arena. Luca repeated, the principle of fighting. Kinnan gestured downwards, implying, know how to utilize what you have. Luca muttered, committing it to memory, adapt to what I have, utilize everything to win. Therefore, I need to know my advantages and what I can rely on to achieve victory, not sit around wishing and hoping for things I don't have. As if understanding something, Luca jumped up. He concluded, no matter how dangerous the situation, as long as I believe in myself, it's enough. His sharp gaze, like a bullet, looked forward. Teacher took away my mechanical limbs, but left me with keen eyesight. That means he doesn't want me to rely on strength to win, but on quick thinking to see my opponent's weaknesses. Snapping out of his thoughts, Luca sternly faced Gotsi's attack. Adapt to what I have. Use what I deem effective to achieve victory. His eyes shone with determination, radiating a murderous aura. Instead of counterattacking, Luca focused on observing and analyzing his opponent's actions. Each of his punches is like a cannonball with powerful destructive force. The vibrations every time he swings his arm, the direction of the punch, is the point of greatest impact. The length of his arms is his advantage. You could say his arms are cannons, but with a slightly slower trigger pull. Also, the trajectory of his arms is quite predictable. Suddenly, a fist swung close to his face, startling Luca, but luckily it missed. Because of that, I can see his moves. In the stands, Kinnan was overjoyed, speechless as he witnessed his students still standing. He smiled proudly. That kid is a genius. Kinnan recalled previous battles, that he has experienced many life-or-death battles on his own and has grown through them. Connecting this with how Luca was continuously dodging fatal blows, Kinnan concluded, the more difficult it gets, the more I expect you to show your talent. Gotsi roared ugh and rushed to attack him. The spectators in the stands, seeing this, became excited and cheered loudly. Hey, why are you so hesitant against that brat, Gotsi? Finish him quickly. Ignore those shrill voices from them. Luca continued to use all his mental faculties to reason that I've already achieved a high level of focus for this match. From that, I can see almost all of Gotsi's attacks. Can I apply the practical combat principles I've learned to this situation? Luca suddenly recalled the image of being thrown and defeated by Kinnan before. He suddenly understood Gotsi's movement and attack patterns. Luca easily grabbed one of Gotsi's arms and threw him, the action causing Gotsi to gape in surprise. Without waiting for him to react, Luca kicked Gotsi hard in the face, startling his opponent. Luca delivered a critical blow, dislocating Gotsi's jaw and sending him flying. He watched the scene with amusement, saying cheerfully, what an exciting battle. It's been a while since I've felt like this. Gotsi staggered to his feet after the attack. He was so frustrated his nerves were on edge. What trick did you use on me? Gotsi swung his fist and charged, but all his moves were useless. He aimed for Luca. A flash of light. I told you before, you're only good enough to annoy me. The punch left a deep gash on Luca's face, but the excitement didn't fade from his expression. He ducked, causing Gotsi's attack to slam into the wall. Luca grabbed Gotsi's chin. You think your attacks are ineffective? He lifted his leg, preparing to kick. Of course. At first glance they are, but I'll find another way to compensate. As soon as he finished speaking, Luca flipped into the air, pulling Gotsi's neck and spinning him around. Weighted down by Luca's pull, Gotsi became instantly dizzy and lost his footing. Finally, he quickly collapsed just as. He looked at them with contempt. Hope for my failure all you want, but I will win and disappoint you. The match ended with Gotsi beaten so badly he couldn't get up, but Luca still had strength left. He put on his hat and glanced at his opponent lying on the ground. If this were a battlefield with countless variables, I wouldn't have been able to focus like this. Only in a controlled environment can I utilize my near-limitless focus. In the stands, the still stunned spectators watched Luca walk away. He walked up to a large door, which opened automatically. Luca looked inside, thinking, now I have to admit, Kinnan is a truly excellent teacher. Kinnan was waiting for him inside, arms crossed. He offered his praise with a smile. Well done, my good boy. Kinnan continued, congratulations on your initiation into the hardships of this battlefield. Luca replied, adapting doesn't mean failing, master. Suddenly, Kinnan took out an item and handed it to him. Take this. It was a chip, shimmering with blue light. Luca asked, a credit chip? Are you rewarding me? Kinnan calmly replied, no way. Kinnan explained, that's Gotsi's medical bill. Go give it to him. It's best to be kind, in moderation. Luca said, confused, I want to be a warrior, a soldier, not a saint. Hearing this, Kinnan gently patted Luca's head. Still so naive, Luca, especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships. His words made Luca's eyes widen in surprise. Kinnan continued, his eyes full of conviction. The kindness I'm talking about isn't charity. It's an investment. Slowly accumulate and build relationships, and there will come a time when you'll need them. Today, I'm just collecting on my investment in that loudmouth. He turned to leave, but not without adding, don't forget, creating an environment that benefits you is also a good quality of a skilled soldier. Luca watched Kin An's retreating figure, pondering, I completely misunderstood Kinnan. I thought he valued my talent and felt sympathy because we came from similar backgrounds, so he taught me. That was clearly a misunderstanding. Kinnan will definitely reclaim what he invested in me someday, somehow, in a way that I won't be able to refuse. Though his back receded into the distance, the murderous aura surrounding him was still palpable. Cut to a doctor examining bone structures on a monitor. Gotzi lay trembling on a bed, glancing at the display. The doctor announced, this signal frequency band is too narrow. I'm afraid it's incompatible with your cybernetic prosthetics. With the current capacity of your prosthetics, malfunctions or paralysis may occur. Personally, I recommend Xenix Hyperlens 9 product. Hearing this, Gotzi agitatedly shouted that's the newest product. How can I afford that? Are you trying to bankrupt me with these prices? Other people use cheap stuff, and they're fine. The doctor adjusted his glasses and replied, they haven't over-modified their systems like you. If you had paid attention to compatibility, even older products wouldn't be a problem. Gotzi said, I didn't have the money back then, so I had to make do with what I could find. The doctor bargained, well, I could buy back your current limbs and use that money to fit you with compatible parts. Gotzi hesitated, add at least something combat ready. The doctor refused, no, with this amount, you can only afford used everyday prosthetics. Hearing this, Gotzi tensed up and sat up abruptly. Damn it, do you know how much this is worth? Just then, someone entered the room. It was Luca. He put his hands in his pockets and calmly said, I came to visit you, Gotzi. I'm glad to see you're still in one piece. Seeing him, Gotzi became agitated, his pupils dilating as if about to explode. He yelled, oh my God. He roared at Luca, you bastard. I'll skewer you. I swear I'll skewer you. Luca calmly leaned down close to Gotzi's face and reminded him, I warned you before the match began that I would cripple you. Hearing this, Gotzi was terrified. Suddenly, Kin An's advice echoed in Luca's mind. Creating an advantageous environment is also a virtue of a skilled soldier. He paused abruptly. Oh dear, I unintentionally provoked him. Gotzi just whimpered angrily, groaning ugh ugh. Luca approached the doctor and said, that Hyperlens 9 product you mentioned earlier. He presented a credit chip and asked, is this enough to cover it? The doctor replied, yes, that's sufficient. Seeing this, Gotzi shouted, what the hell are you doing? Lucas said, can't you tell? I'm paying your medical bills. Gotzi asked in astonishment, why are you paying my medical bills? Luca replied, just a whim. Gotzi, stunned, asked, you really are a good boy, aren't you? He gritted his teeth. I asked this to Victor's compassion. Gotzi suddenly asked, good boy, what's your name? Luca answered, Luca. Contrary to his previous aggression, Gotzi now seemed gentler. If you ever need help, look me up. I'll definitely repay you, Luca. Hearing this, Luca felt a slight pang in his chest. He sighed softly. This feeling isn't so bad. Cut to the Axer Tan Empire training grounds. A fight so intense that the surroundings were reduced to dust. Ailey leaped up, launching a kick towards Luca's face. But he easily blocked the kick with a single arm. Suddenly, his fingers twitched, preparing a counterattack. Ailey, sensing the force, widened his eyes. Astonished, Ailey hung suspended in the air, facing Luca, who was winding up for a punch straight to his face. An explosion erupted, a powerful orange-red light flashing. Ailey, in pain, clutched his injured arm and winced. The fight over, the two sat together. Ailey asked, I heard you learned the Aki fighting technique from instructor Keenan. Luca replied, yeah. Hearing this, Ailey recalled the technique. Aki is just street fighting used by thugs, like putting broken glass in your fist or throwing sand in your opponent's eyes. Luca agreed. I found it hard to believe too, but he said it was the Aki fighting technique, so I just went with it. Luca sighed. I can't imagine beating you in a fight anymore, but among the trainees, you're my only real rival. He thought to himself, the arena experience has completely overturned my fighting foundation. It feels like all my accumulated skills have been condensed into a single drop of essence. Ailey glanced at Luca, thinking, Luca seems happy today. He asked, Luca, if you're free, could you help me with something? Luca agreed, sure. Scene change. Azure Empire, reception room of the Royal Guard training facility. Luca's face was screwed up in a grimace, clearly very uncomfortable. Ailey, flustered, with beads of sweat on his forehead, looked away. Lion Zaman was there, her gaze fixed to the right. Luca, trembling slightly, broke the silence. Ailey, he said. Ailey, sitting opposite him, stammered an explanation. Sorry, Luca. My family has had ties with the Zaman family for a long time, so it was hard for me to refuse. Lion asked, I heard you've been avoiding me. I've sent several meeting requests. What? Luca replied glumly, because I'm not interested. I was hoping not accepting the meetings would be enough of a refusal. Ailey suggested, Luca, be a little nicer. He retorted irritably, Ailey, shut up. This situation is annoying enough already. Lion frowned, seemingly losing patience. She asked, is there something about me you dislike? He took a sip of tea and replied, I don't have time for dating. Unlike you, I'm an orphan. I can't afford to slip up, not even once. Lion Zaman responded firmly, then you should befriend me all the more. Luca remained stern. You don't understand, Lion Zaman. The thought of being controlled by a girl like her displeased him greatly. He continued, relying on the power of a noble like you means everything could crumble because of one of your whims. I want to rise on my own. Lion asked, you say you don't want to rely on nobles, yet you're close to Eiley. Isn't that a contradiction? Faced with the tense argument, Eiley remained silent and embarrassed. Luca replied, I'm friends with Eiley not because he's from the Katika family, but because he's a comrade, a friend I can trust with my life. Hearing this, she hesitantly asked, won't you even give me the smallest chance? Luca remained silent, contemplating her words. Then he stood up resolutely, firmly refusing, unfortunately no. So, I prefer you didn't seek me out anymore. Luca walked away, leaving the two behind, still stunned. Suddenly, Eiley ran after him, calling out Luca. He reproached him, you didn't have to be so harsh. He just said, if I didn't do that, she wouldn't leave me alone. Eiley still wasn't convinced. I know, but why did you reject Lion so bluntly? You could at least have met with her socially. He mentioned the Zaman family, then thought, I don't understand why Lion Zaman is clinging to me, just because that old geezer introduced us. And why would she approach someone as unremarkable as me? There's definitely something fishy going on. But he still tried to persuade him. In short, you're scared because you don't know her well. If you took the time to get to know her, surely. Suddenly, Luca asked, Eiley, do you like her? At that question, he was stunned into silence. Eiley stammered, what? Why would you think that? He explained his reasoning. Just by looking at your breathing, your eyes, and your flustered expression, I know. Luca thought to himself, ever since learning Victima, I can see through so much. His voice turned cold. Anyway, I don't care. If you like her, don't be sneaky about it. Do something. Eiley hesitated, grinding his teeth, but he turned his head. Looking back toward the door of the room they had just left, 3 untouched cups of tea sat on the table, but no one was there. Eiley sadly admitted, I can't do it, Luca. Amidst swirling smoke, high above, 2 silent figures appeared. Luca sat cross-legged, a serious expression on his face as he thought to himself, this meditation training is to maintain composure in every moment. I need to focus. A moment later, he spoke coldly. If a fight were to break out in the office, or at any other time, how would you handle it? Could you answer this question for me? Kinnan, with his eyes closed, calmly countered, I told you I would tell you if you won the fight in the arena, didn't I? At this reminder, Luca couldn't help but recall the scene. At that time, there were many people with guns waiting inside and outside the room. If it were you, how would you escape that situation? At this, Kinnan chuckled and replied, if a fight broke out, I would probably sit down calmly and hide under the table. His answer puzzled Luca. Aleph and his gang all have guns, so it would be extremely dangerous. If my first action is to run and cause a commotion, wouldn't I miss the opportunity to attack and get shot into a honeycomb? The two sat high above, plumes of black smoke rising before them. In the silence, Kinnan explained, the opportunity to attack will be created by you. You might get shot, but if you're lucky, you'll be able to subdue them. Luca posed another tricky question. If I were to hide or run away and not be there, what would you do in that situation? Kinnan, his heart unmoved amidst the changing tides of the world, coldly replied, weren't you planning to take Aleph hostage and seize his gun? With your training to have strong attack instincts, you've surely simulated the scenario of subduing the gang on the spot, haven't you? He elaborated on the plan. If you do this, you'll immediately become a shared target with Aleph. Changing bosses in the new district is a common occurrence. It's not difficult. Your actions will merely give Aleph's subordinates an excuse to eliminate him. It's quite simple for gangs. At this point, he opened his eyes, glancing meaningfully at Luca. Of course, the moment you become the target of those guns, when you're in danger, I will subdue the gang in my own way. It can be done. If you're injured, I'll help you escape through a secret passage to ensure your safety. Luca, hearing this, looked at him with immense affection, thinking to himself, not only did he predict my actions when facing danger, but he also knows about the secret passage. This is a superhuman skill I can't even fathom. I'll need to pay closer attention to grasp everything. Suddenly, Kinnan stood up. Unprompted, he said, in the ancient tongue, Aether means the eyes that slay demons and represents all things terrible. Remember, Aether Modi begins with utilizing the full resources of your brain and pushing it to its limits to help it develop alongside seeing through everything. Luca also stood up, his curiosity bubbling over. He asked, your neurological impairment is a side effect of using your brain to its extreme limit, isn't it? As soon as he spoke, his eyes widened in astonishment. A moment later, he shouted at Kenan, but if that's the case, doesn't that mean that if equipped with Zedon, you can't use the Aether fighting technique normally? Kenan smirked and replied, "You're very perceptive. I just mentioned it, and you've already spotted the discrepancy. I thought it would take you at least 3 months to realize this." Luca thought to himself, when I become a member of the Guard, I'll also be issued Zedon equipment. Zedon is advanced gear incorporating the Empire's cutting-edge technology, but no one can wear it continuously. It's a high-bandwidth device requiring all brain resources and computational support to operate smoothly. The brain is connected to these devices for maximum performance. In other words, when using Zedon, the brain has no resources left for Aether, making it extremely difficult to control my actions. Luca clenched his fists, his teeth grinding together. Doubt gnawed at him. He knew this, but didn't tell me. What does that mean? Then he spoke aloud. If I'd known I couldn't use Aether with Zedon, I would never have considered learning it. It's all my foolishness. Every device has its limitations. Kenan sighed, "Oh, that's it then?" Luca left without hesitation, offering a parting word of thanks. "Thank you for everything you've told me today." Kenan watched him go, his expression cold, and slowly said, "If you change your mind, come find me anytime, Luca." Luca's face contorted in frustration, thinking, "Damn it." Luca pushed open the door and entered, lost in thought. He said, "It's been 3 months, hasn't it?" Kudo Z, the guard captain, placed his hand on the table and said coldly, "I've been busy and haven't had time to pay attention to the trainees for a while." Luca stood opposite him, thinking, according to Eiley, it's because of the rebellion. Seeing Kudo Z's evasiveness, he quickly offered an excuse. "I've been spending my time training, since I haven't been assigned any long-term missions. Preparing for any situation is the right thing to do." Kudo Z clasped his hands under his chin. "From now on, you'll hardly receive any basic missions, because now you've reached the level of a true warrior." Hearing this, Luca felt grateful. "Thank you, Commander." At this moment, Kudo Z asked about Luca's situation. "I heard you often meet with Kenan. Is that correct?" Luca felt a moment of anxiety, thinking, so this is why he called me here, probably to find out more about what I've learned. He then pieced everything together. It seems the higher-ups know everything, even about me going to the black market, participating in the arena, and fighting there. Suddenly, Kudo Z interrupted his thoughts. "Are you learning combat techniques from Kenan?" Luca calmly replied, "I'm not learning anymore." Kudo Z surmised, "I'm guessing Kenan didn't give up, but you did." Luca was astonished. "How did you know?" Kudo Z gave a sinister smile and said, "Because when equipped with Zedon, you can't use Eka-Victima combat techniques, correct? This is something anyone can guess. So you thought it was pointless for someone who will become a guard and will have to deal with enemies on the battlefield later? You've realized that much." He continued, mentioning Kenan. "Those who lack ability are eliminated by Kenan first, because he doesn't need useless people. But those who are capable quickly realize they don't need to learn it, because those techniques are difficult to learn and apply in combat. That's why, besides Kenan, no one has mastered those combat techniques." Luca looked at him meaningfully. "Do you want me to continue learning those combat techniques and master them?" Kudo Z frowned slightly and said with a smile, "To be precise, I want you to maintain a close relationship with Kenan. This is something you'll need in the future. To do that, continuing to learn those techniques is necessary." This is an order. Luca felt suspicious. Was the guard captain wary of Kenan? Why pay so much attention to a veteran like him? I mustn't ask questions. If I learn the truth, my life could be in danger, and that's something I don't want. Then he said, "Understood. I will continue learning those techniques and try to understand and apply them well." Hearing the desired answer, Kudo Z smiled inwardly, then gave a warning. "Remember that I'm always watching you." The tension in the room was palpable as Kudo Z's voice continued. "You have the potential to go far and achieve great things in the future." Meanwhile, outside the base, Kenan held something in his hand and said, "I didn't expect you to come back so soon." He then put the object down and continued, "Anyway, I said to come back if you change your mind, so I won't ask any further." Luca then spoke, "Thank you, instructor." He looked at Kenan's back, thinking, I thought he wouldn't take me back, but he agreed more readily than I expected. A moment later, he asked, "By the way, why did you come to the lower district today?" Kenan looked at a pile of items and replied, "Do kids these days like these things too? When I was young, I used to stand here, mesmerized for quite a while." He went inside and continued, "Shopkeeper." The shopkeeper looked up from his newspaper with a cold expression. "If you're looking for something, look for it yourself. Don't ask me." Kenan said loudly and generously, "I'll take all the toys here. Can you deliver them for me?" The shopkeeper's surprised voice rang out, all of them." Luca, his face sweating, wondered why toys. He hung his head silently, saying nothing. A while later, the two left, arriving at the orphanage gate. Luca spoke up, "This isn't the orphanage, is it?" Kenan, walking ahead, said casually, "The storage is in the inner area. Rest there." Luca obediently replied, "I understand." Just as he was about to leave, a voice rang out. "Hey, Luca!" Gotsi, his arms full of boxes, yelled, "You called me all the way here just for this." He angrily shouted, "Do I look like your errand boy?" Luca, small in stature, faced him and replied, "You said to call if I needed help, and this area doesn't allow deliveries." I was at a loss for who to call. Gotsi angrily gritted his teeth. "No, I was expecting something more impressive from you." Gotsi's booming voice echoed, like you fighting another gang or something. At this, Luca closed his eyes and said calmly, "I wouldn't call you for a fight. You idiot." Hearing this, Gotsi stammered, "Teach, that's true, but well." Luca looked at him, thinking, the way he's balancing those boxes with his new cervical vertebrae, it's clear I didn't waste my money on him. Meanwhile, Kinnan was coldly following the guide. Gotsi asked, "What kind of person is he?" He continued, "If he's someone even Aleph is wary of, I should know, right?" Luca replied, "If you want to keep your head on your shoulders, don't get involved." Then he thought, maybe this is the orphanage where Master Kinnan grew up. After becoming successful, did he come back to do charity work and donate? Children with cheerful faces ran out. Looking at the things in their hands, they cheered, "Thank you, handsome man. Thank you, ugly mister." Hearing this, Gotsi sulked a bit. Really, what's with these kids? Suddenly, a squabble between two children caught Luca's attention. The curly-haired child said, "Give it back. This is mine." The other replied, "I saw it first." Luca watched the two children, thinking, all right, whoever's stronger gets it. This is something you need to learn. After all, not everyone can get everything fairly. If you want something, train your strength to take it. This is something everyone will eventually realize. The world isn't rich enough to make everyone happy. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Kinnan gestured with his hand. "Let's talk." The sky was turning golden, surrounded by trees. Under the shade of a tree, Kinnan and Luca leaned against the railing. Kinnan spoke, "I still drop by this place occasionally. Although the salary here isn't much, judging by the director's appearance, it seems he knows how to use the aid supplies quite well." Luca turned and asked, "Did you grow up here, master?" Kinnan chuckled softly and replied, "I've forgotten all about the past. There's nothing left to say. I just occasionally visit these orphanages as a memento." Then he bowed his head slightly and continued, "Perhaps I even visited the orphanage you stayed at before." Luca silently looked at him. From this angle, Kin just looks like an ordinary veteran. Damaged nerves can't handle the overload of using combat equipment. The brain suffers severe problems, and the aura of a soldier, once so bright, is extinguished, leaving no light behind. Perhaps that will be my image in the distant future. Luca stared at Kin and his trembling hand. Of course, that's assuming I'm lucky enough to survive so many fierce battles. He silently observed him. Suddenly, Kinnan spoke. "Let's get straight to the point." He continued, "Who directed you to find me?" The question made Luca extremely anxious. Kinnan's eyes were filled with a murderous intent, his voice deepening. It was the colonel's order, wasn't it? The atmosphere between Luca and Kinnan became incredibly tense. Luca turned his head, feigning ignorance. "What are you talking about?" Then, reassuring himself, "Don't look into his eyes." With Kinnan's clairvoyance, every action becomes a clue and information. He remained silent, thinking, how did he know it was the Royal Guard commander's order? How much does he know? If Kinnan really is a problem, a danger significant enough to alert the Royal Guard commander. Luca's hand relaxed slightly, then he could eliminate me right here. Suddenly, Kinnan's voice rang out. "Calm down if you don't want to die, Luca." He continued, "If you really attack, I'm afraid I'll have a hard time subduing you without skewering you." Luca's face paled at his words, but he calmly replied, "I am a soldier of the Empire. That's all I can say." Kinnan turned around and said, "You know nothing, so you can't even determine how to respond appropriately." He continued, "I don't blame you. A soldier obeying his superior's orders is a matter of course. You are the ideal soldier the Empire desires." Luca was slightly taken aback by the statement and lowered his head. Kinnan coldly explained further, "When you first came to me, did you think you made that decision yourself? At all?" Then he mentioned the attack, a person fighting barehanded. Ever since you used ballistic manipulation without support equipment, the higher-ups have been preparing, because someone with Aka-Victima aptitude like me has appeared. Luca stood stiffly in the unfamiliar place. Kinnan's voice echoed, "You thought you came to me to become stronger after the Koare ruins incident." Luca's eyes widened, emotionless. He was like a startled rabbit, reassuring himself, "Don't be manipulated by Kinnan. I have to face strong enemies during reconnaissance missions, and I thought I needed more strength, so I searched the instructor's records to find someone who could train me." Suddenly, Kinnan spoke. "It was all my own decision. I chose it myself. Luca, everyone in this world is a slave to someone." A moment later, he fell silent, then turned to look at him with hopeful eyes. "There are only those who know they are slaves and those who don't. Do you want to avoid the truth now?" He walked away, chuckling softly and saying, "Because you're still young." Luca's face relaxed, his mind blank. Kenan added, go back. If you want to report back to Hemi Liad, go ahead. Luca, remembering Hemi Liad's smile that day, thought to himself, I don't believe Kenan's words. But just as Kenan said, Hemi Liad's guard commander. Luca froze, his eyes emotionless. I want to continue learning Akaviktima. Don't doubt the Luca Empire. After all I want is success. Don't be manipulated by Kin and don't think any further. Don't doubt. But what if even this desire for success isn't my own will? A drop of crimson blood fell. A second later, dissolving into the water, spreading into a small pool. Luca's hesitant voice echoed continuously. Then currently, in the Axarutan Empire's simulation training room. Luca sat alone in a corner, surrounded by people busy with their own work. He held his head in his hands, his face grimacing. In the end, I couldn't report what happened that day to Guard Commander Hemi Liad. He was taken to a psychological examination room. If I reported it, my superiors would think I might be infected with dangerous thoughts, and they would conduct a psychological examination. In the current chaotic situation, my score would definitely be lower than the previous test. Luca thought of the Axarutan Empire's symbol. The Empire never forgives those with rebellious thoughts. In the worst case, I could be expelled from the guard and sent to hard labor. His heart was filled with anxiety over Kin's words. Go back. If you want to report to Hemi Liad, go ahead. He then anxiously thought, Kin must have anticipated that I would be worried like this. To report to the guard commander, I need to prepare to pass the psychological test, and to do that, I need to see him. At this moment, the door of a chamber opened, followed by a wave of hot air. Ailey appeared, his face grimacing, covered in various devices. His whole body was tired and sweaty, and he breathed heavily. Suddenly, a water bottle was thrown towards him. Ailey was startled, catching it with his hand. Luca's voice rang out. Ailey, are you training on your own too? Not bad, Ailey replied with a laugh. After you beat me up last time, I felt a bit annoyed. He then approached Luca and continued. Did you come here to cheer on your hard-working comrade? A surprise gift is even more valuable, Luca replied, of course. I came here for something. Hearing this, Ailey clicked his tongue. The two of them went to sit down somewhere to rest. Luca's face darkened. Last time, you said that the prestigious families manipulate the aptitude test, right? Ailey, his six-pack abs visible, sat down and looked at him. Everyone knows that. Those who aren't capable enough are eliminated because they can't withstand the training. He suddenly turned back and said, Ailey, how did you pass the psychological test during the aptitude test? Ailey opened the water bottle and glanced at Luca. Luca's voice sounded like a plea. Tell me. Ailey seriously replied, you know this question is very dangerous for me, right? Luca sat down. I've checked. There's no one here, and what I'm about to do will benefit the Empire. Ailey replied cryptically, I've checked. There's no one here. Just as you predicted, I know how. Luca pressed, what's the method? Ailey closed his eyes and hesitantly said, there's no other way. The answer left Luca dumbfounded. Ailey began to instruct, create a version of yourself to present outwardly and place your consciousness inside as an observer, like sealing the self you want to protect within. Doing so will allow you to pass the test. Psychological trauma. Luca stared blankly at him. What the hell are you talking about? Ailey chuckled. Some ordinary people lose their memories or develop multiple personalities due to psychological trauma. This is a way to do it consciously. Luca was astonished. Is that even possible? Damn, it must be, since you're saying it. Ailey looked at him. Our brains live in illusion. The two personas inside you, Luca, are like two perfect puzzle pieces. Ailey continued. If you keep playing the role of a loyal soldier, the self of a loyal soldier will actually overlay your surface consciousness. A few months before the aptitude test, I prayed to the Emperor every time I woke up. I imitated what my father did. He added coldly, keep in mind that if you drag it out for too long, your sense of self will waver. You won't be able to distinguish your true self from before anymore. Luca asked in surprise, where did you learn all this stuff? A moment later, he fell into deep thought, bowing his head. Anyway, if that works, I don't need to imitate anyone. I just need to replay myself from the past, the one who scored high on the psychological test. The me before I met Ailey and Kenan. Suddenly, Ailey spoke up. I don't know what you're planning, but be careful, Luca. His face was full of worry. Manipulating the results of a psychological test is very dangerous. Luca glared back at him. I never thought I'd hear those words from you. Just as he finished speaking, a call from Kenan appeared on his device. Luca cursed inwardly. Damn it, of all times. A moment later, he and Kenan appeared beneath a tall building. Kenan looked up and said, the slums, Luca. Today's training is live combat. He continued to look forward and explained, a very simple training exercise. Luca looked at him, thinking, it's pretty tidy for a gang's building. Kenan is still treating me normally after. That day, he looked at Kenan and pondered, which is why I feel even more uncomfortable. At that moment, Kenan held up 2 fingers. Luca, I'll give you 20 seconds. They stood before a door. He commanded, subdue all the criminals inside. Luca obeyed without hesitation. A moment later, he touched the lock on the door. He crushed the keypad, locked directly. Inside were criminals lounging around. One of them on the sofa noticed the stranger's appearance. The criminal looked at Luca with an unfriendly gaze. He stood in front of Luca, blocking his way, and spoke up. "Who's the pipsqueak? Doesn't look like a customer." Luca silently looked at him, thinking, what idiot brings a gun right to the door like this? He scanned the criminals. His eyes stopped at 3 men playing cards, 3 armed criminals. Then he looked at the scar man sitting opposite him, someone who looked like the leader. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. Luca thought, and I can sense someone in the bathroom. The leader pointed his gun at him. Get in my head, bashed in by a brat first thing in the morning. What a bad day. Before he could finish his sentence, Luca delivered a powerful kick, sending the criminal flying backward. His body soared through the air, leaving the 3 men sitting below with astonished faces, their jaws dropping. Luca raised his fist and said coldly, "My head's a mess. This is perfect. Might as well die a little." The criminal was even stuck to the wall, unconscious. He wasn't aware that he was holding a loaded gun. The cold, black muzzle of the gun pointed down at the heads of those below. The criminals below gaped in fear at the sight. They hurriedly raised their guns, preparing to retaliate. But their speed was no match for Luca's. He pointed the black muzzle of his gun towards them. The 3 men instantly felt a bone-jarring pain as their wrists were shot and broken by Luca's superhuman speed. This wasn't a gunfight. Luca was in complete control, untouchable. But just then, a dark figure flickered in the corner. A desperate criminal decided to ambush him, firing his gun and yelling, "Die." Luca calmly dodged the bullets, muttering, "Missed every shot. You live by violence. Yet your skills are this pathetic." The sleek, black muzzle of his gun was silent and still like its owner. Suddenly, a side door quietly opened, seemingly unnoticed until now. From inside, a heavily tattooed criminal emerged, holding a taser. He looked disheveled, as if he'd just come from a wild party, his pants not even fully zipped. He mumbled what? Looking at the chaotic scene before him, his comrades defeated at the end of Luca's gun, he didn't seem surprised. He just lazily asked, "All this commotion over this? Seems I'm still drunk." Luca turned, looking directly at him, as if anticipating his arrival. He calmly breathed out a chilling sentence, as cold as the gun pointed at the man. "If you don't want to lose those patched-up limbs, knock yourself out." The tattooed man's face paled. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. His cowardly expression contrasted sharply with the bright, flickering taser he held. But it seemed he knew when to comply. As soon as Luca finished speaking, the doorway flashed with light, and the buzzing sound of the taser filled the air. The tattooed man lay on the cold floor, unconscious. Luca calmly put his hands in his pockets. Relying on his intuition, he assessed the situation. There's still movement in the bathroom, in the silent room. He slowly opened a door. Whatever Luca saw behind that door made his face harden, the veins in his eyes bulging with a mixture of outrage, anger, and helplessness. He muttered furiously, "Bastards," as he saw a pair of slender hands bound tightly with rope. Kinnan, seeing him enter, simply smiled knowingly. Took you about 12 seconds. He clapped as he watched Luca carry the victim in his arms, saying casually, "Good job, good boy." Unlike his teacher's composure, Luca's face was filled with rage. He practically growled, "Why didn't you take them all out, teacher?" Kinnan calmly replied, "We are outsiders. Interfering too much could disrupt the order of this place, putting many others in danger." He continued, gently instructing, "There are many people in this world who can't protect themselves. You know what happens when you don't have power, don't you?" Luca understood perfectly. The fire in his eyes cooled slightly. He looked at the frail, unconscious woman in his arms, thinking, this woman has suffered terrible things because she lacks power. I hated living like that too, which is why I risked everything to get to where I am. Before, when I saw people like this, I used to think they were fools for not seizing the opportunities the Empire offered. But today, I can't stand the injustice of this society. Luca thought to himself. Then followed consecutive days of fighting under Kinnan's orders. As he recalled, after that day, Kinnan frequently brought him to the slums and thrust him into fights without any prior warning. He had to fight numerous criminal gangs. The fights were persistent, but not exhausting because, according to Luca, the purpose of these battles wasn't victory. The important thing was how to fight most effectively, not only grasping the opponent's abilities, but also being aware of the surrounding environment to create an advantageous route. And the result, of course, was that he never lost. Luca remained calm, without a scratch. He knew that after that day, Kinnan had been quietly training him. One morning, like any other morning, the repair shop was still lit. Riza wiped the sweat from her forehead, her body covered in grime and grease from the vehicles. A clear voice rang out, tinged with the smell of gasoline and oil. "Welcome, saying welcome implied a customer, but it was actually acquaintances, Kinnan and Luca, her regulars, coming to visit. As usual, Kinnan smiled and requested, Riza, a cup of coffee for me. Black coffee with oil slick. Riza, still habitually treating Luca like a child, asked, and Luca, do you want some milk? Luca, engrossed in observing his surroundings, replied succinctly, I also want coffee. No need for milk, thank you. Luca, slightly embarrassed, whispered, we didn't need to stop by Riza's workshop, did we? His master, Kinnan, with his usual calm and gentle demeanor, replied, Riza is the woman you saved. Seeing her living so strongly, aren't you proud? Looking at the small, resourceful girl, Luca couldn't help but recall that Riza was the woman he had rescued from a gang not long ago. He heard she had been kidnapped and tortured for months. Fortunately, her spirit hadn't been broken, and she was able to return to a normal life. That small girl had such a tragic past. Luca continued his recollection. The reason Riza was kidnapped was because her friend, whom she had helped at the shop, had stolen money from the gang. The gang tracked down the friend to capture Riza. That friend was no longer alive. The two men sat at the table, waiting for Riza. Luca suddenly asked, Master, did you know Riza from before? Kinnan slowly recounted, Riza grew up in an orphanage. She had a talent for mechanics, so I sponsored her education. She doesn't know I'm her sponsor, so it's a secret. The two were talking when the door suddenly slammed open, followed by a voice. What's going on? Following the gruff voice was the large, burly figure of Gotsi. He pointed his heavy metal arm at Luca, muttering, You're here too? Good boy. He then turned to Riza. Riza, get me a beer. He said. Riza, while bringing the drink, grumbled, Your nervous system is severely damaged from overtraining. Why don't you rest? As for why this strange acquaintance existed, Luca explained that after rescuing Riza, Kinnan arranged for the two of them to meet and assign Gotsi the task of protecting Riza, while Riza became Gotsi's mechanic. Luca also turned back to remind him, It's best to listen to your mechanic, Gotsi. Gotsi gritted his teeth in frustration. What's all the fuss about just for a beer? Finally, 3 steaming hot cups of coffee were brought out. Along with the coffee came hushed whispers, but with Gotsi's volume, it was anything but a secret. He leaned in close to Luca, practically yelling, I hear there's been some trouble in this area lately. What are you going to do? The gang leaders are starting to talk about dealing with you. If they make a move, even I can't protect Riza. Before Luca could answer, Kinnan spoke up. No need to worry about that. We probably won't be coming here again for a while. Riza, looking worried, clutched her plate and asked for a while. How long is that? Kinnan calmly sipped his coffee and vaguely replied, Could be a few months, could be a few years. Luca pondered this seriously. Oh, you mean we won't be coming to the slums anymore? He knew he couldn't come to the slums alone. His superiors wouldn't allow trainees to go out on their own. Looking at Riza and Gotsi, Luca couldn't quite place the emotion stirring within him. He only knew that today might be the last time he would see them. Looking at Riza's shy smile, he felt a surge of admiration. Despite experiencing such horrific events, she faced reality head-on and immediately started working. Gotsi still had his usual gruff and surly demeanor. Luca knew Gotsi constantly faced danger in his world. The coffee cup was raised, then heavily lowered. Luca didn't know if he was feeling conflicted or regretful. Looking at this cheerful scene, he told himself, Don't pity them, Luca. Not coming here anymore is for the best. The bitter coffee was brought to his lips. It was like his resolve, perhaps good news for him now. At the same time, in the Royal Guard headquarters, a subordinate reported, Instructor Kin and is still exhibiting some strange behavior. End of report. Kathoji chuckled darkly. His voice was laced with a sardonic amusement. He started his trainee life quite late. Normally, he wouldn't have been able to become a Royal Guard, but at that time, the Empire had to accept even the most unruly elements. It was a chaotic period. He recalled Kin En's bombing days and could only sigh and wonder. Even I don't really know what kind of person Kinnan is. When I was a rookie, he was already a core member of the Royal Guard. I'm guessing he mainly handled classified missions. The subordinate, sweating from anxiety and surprise, thought, so even the Royal Guard captain can't access information about Kinnan. This subordinate guard was none other than Luca. Kathoji continued, Anyway, Kinnan seems to think highly of you. I've sent many trainees to him, but none have lasted long. He opened his system as he spoke that you're excellent, but you're currently susceptible to negative influences. I think it's necessary to conduct a psychological evaluation for you. So, I'll schedule an appointment. Be there on time. Luca bowed his head low, replying clearly, I'll follow your orders, sir. In his mind, he thought, just as I predicted. Kathoji held his face in his hands, as if speaking to himself. Luca, let me be frank. There are only 2 possible outcomes for a Royal Guard assigned a task like this. Silenced, or recognized, and promoted to the heart of the Royal Guard. He gestured towards Luca, where the sunlight illuminated his rigid posture, and slowly continued, I want you to be the latter. I'm just doing my duty. Luca replied impassively. Luca, knowing how to please Kathoji, continued, if everything goes smoothly, I believe you'll support me. Kathoji chuckled, amused. He then said something that startled Luca. Indeed, if you achieve significant results, I will become your backing. To be more precise, I will adopt you. He rambled on. Luca Kathoji doesn't sound bad. He didn't notice Luca's face slowly contorting. Luca pursed his lips in disbelief. The commander of the Royal Guard wants to adopt me. He was astonished. Even during a psychological evaluation, he couldn't believe it. The commander's name was Hemi La Kathoji. The Kathoji family was one of the most prestigious families in the empire. Insane. The robot beside the machine spoke. Luca, shall we begin the psychological evaluation? While conducting the test, the robot noticed the smile on Luca's lips and curiously asked, I see joy on your face. Did something good happen? Luca replied flatly, none of your business. Let's start. A monstrous punch landed on the punching bag, so powerful that even the bag seemed to feel the pain. Aili frantically attacked the punching bag tirelessly. Not only his hands, but his legs too, were like weapons, assaulting the bag as if it were an enemy. His legs suddenly stopped as if to regain rhythm. Then, as if mustering all his strength, Aili delivered a blow so powerful that it shattered the punching bag, the sand scattering like its fragmented pain. Aili gasped for a long time, as if possessed, frantically grabbing ointment. Then, he painfully applied it to the wounds caused by his unrestrained strength. Luca, watching this, spoke up, training to the point your joints are worn out. Are you even the Aili I know? Aili didn't answer, only chuckled and asked, Luca, did you pass the psychological evaluation all right? Luca sincerely replied, all thanks to you. Aili, even though I don't know what you're going through, if you need my help, don't hesitate to ask. Ailui's face turned slightly cold, a hint of helplessness in his eyes. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. I can't tell you now, but soon, just this once, could you do me a favor, Luca? Luca just silently looked at him. Finally, he slowly said, if you're ever in danger on the battlefield, even if the chances of success are slim, I'll come to save you, even if it costs me my life. Between them was an unspoken understanding. Hearing this, Aili smiled in relief. That's enough, Luca. Aili couldn't hide the worry in his eyes. He didn't even realize how much he was sweating. Soon, you'll know what I need you to do. I hope I'm just worrying over nothing. Luca silently pondered. While saying he wasn't curious about what Aili needed was a lie, he didn't need to pry. The psychological evaluation went well. He regained the trust of the guard captain, and his current goal was to become adopted by the Kathoji family. He was certain that at that moment, that was his only thought. When the time came for the mission, Kathoji clasped his hands solemnly and announced, officially, from now on, we will commence a special mission. The objective of this mission is to suppress the rebel forces opposing the Empire. The rebel faction consists of 3 families, led by the Zaman family. His voice boomed across the strong troops, led by Luca and Aili. Zaman? Luca seemed startled. He worriedly turned to his friend, knowing how much that name affected him. Because the Zaman family has a huge influence over Aili, putting him in a difficult position, Luca finally realized what Aili wanted him to do. On the aircraft, the soldiers were ready to depart. Everyone wore a serious expression and focused. The engines roared to life with full force. The specialized aircraft quickly sliced through the night sky, bombing the darkness and galloping towards its destination like a warhorse. On one aircraft, Luca formally introduced himself. My name is Luca, and I will be serving as the platoon leader of the 21st Platoon. Everyone below responded respectfully. Greetings, platoon leader. Luca couldn't help but think, I can't believe they gave the platoon leader position to a Royal Guard trainee. The higher-ups must be treating this rebellion as nothing more than a training exercise. According to the deployment orders, the platoon was divided into 21 squads, totaling 27 men. Sergeant Koza, the deputy platoon leader, was Luca's assistant. The man exuded a seasoned and resolute aura. However, Luca assessed that since the platoon leaders were all young trainees, the army had assigned experienced soldiers as the core backbone. Luca assessed each of the haughty, rigid faces. He knew they probably also realized they were tools for training the trainees. Expecting unwavering loyalty to an improved officer was a tall order. He would have to use all his strength to command and lead them. Looking at the experienced Sergeant Koza, Luca pondered. What should I do now? There are 2 options. The first is to hand everything over to Sergeant Koza. I just need to give the orders, and Koza will handle the rest. He knew this was a commonly used option. The second option, he hesitated. Finally, before Sergeant Koza's astonished gaze, Luca declared arrogantly, I'm more capable than all of you. He slowly walked towards them, continuing, therefore, you will follow my orders. Disobedience will be severely punished. His approach was to provoke discontent and then suppress it with force. As expected, sparks of anger flashed in the eyes of the cold, arrogant soldiers. Sensing the volatile situation, Sergeant Koza stepped forward and patted Luca, saying, Platoon leader Luca, let's have a word. He was about to speak when Luca's iron grip clamped down on his hand. Before he could react, his hand was flung back, as if brushing away a speck of dust. The soldiers under his command rushed to support Koza. Luca's voice boomed, meeting their surprised and apprehensive gazes, touching a commanding officer's hand so casually. "Do you look down on me just because I'm young, Sergeant Koza?" Luca calmly paced, speaking nonchalantly. "I come from the same background as you from the lower sectors. I was raised in a second-rate orphanage. But why is there such a difference in our positions?" Luca looked down from above, like a lord surveying his domain. He wasn't just speaking, he was declaring, "Because I'm superior to all of you." He radiated an aura of absolute authority and suppression, each word heavy with pressure. "You may not understand now, but you will soon. The best platoon leader you've ever encountered will be me." Koza remained silent. He knew this wasn't someone to trifle with. Finally, before the surprised eyes of his subordinates, he said he'd been disrespectful and from now on would be more mindful of platoon leader Luca. Luca turned away after leaving a comment. Sergeant Koza, keenly aware of the situation, glanced at him, thinking he's realized I'm not a greenhorn. The Imperial Army outpost was near the rebel stronghold. The blood-red sunset stained the entire base, foreshadowing days of bloodshed within the army. At this point, the soldiers had assembled, standing at attention in formation. Aili held his head, muttering, "So you couldn't stand it and cause conflict with your comrades already?" His face displayed exasperation with Luca. Luca looked straight ahead, murmuring, "I took the initiative to avoid being seen as a child. If you're always so kind, your subordinates will look down on you." Aili didn't argue, only saying, in their eyes, "We really are just kids." As they were talking, the lights suddenly went out. From above, the commander said, "I will reduce the elaborate procedures and ceremonies." Kathoji summarized the terrain. The rebel base is the remains of a fortress from the Akane civilization, surrounded by a large steel wall. He looked at the map and said, "The rebels have found a way to use the Akane fortress. Under the dome, they're the high-powered defensive shield, and the turrets, believed to be Akane weaponry, will shoot down any aircraft that approach. The number of turrets is 5. Once the 11th Armored Brigade breaches the fortress and destroys the turrets, the entire army will surround and advance." Kathoji commanded. Luca thought worriedly. The Armored Brigade is a high-level unit using government-issued combat armor. The Empire has invested heavily in this suppression operation. Kathoji coldly announced, "The commencement time for the battle is 14:10, meaning in 1 hour and 30 minutes. Finalize your preparations by then." Behind the transport aircraft, 2 tall men leaned against the wall. Luca said sarcastically, "See, I knew we were just side characters." Aili chuckled in agreement, "Of course. The higher-ups probably don't want us to die." Luca said bitterly, "So it's like a field trip." His words sounded like something a warmonger would say. Aili laughed. Suddenly, Aili fell silent. He pursed his lips for a long time, then asked anxiously, "Hey, Luca." Luca quickly replied, "You're about to mention the Zaman family, aren't you?" He stated bluntly, "I know you're close to them, but we can't do anything. Aili, even if you're from the Kataka family, siding with the rebels won't keep you safe." Aili bit his lip helplessly and said, "I don't expect any miracles. But if there's any chance, I just hope I can at least save Lien by any means necessary." Luca was exasperated by his stubbornness. He poked Aili, his voice harsh. "You like Lien Zaman enough to die for her?" Aili muttered, "It's not like she's just a first love or something." Aili explained. Luca realized he had to be firm with this lovesick fool. He raised his voice, "Hey, snap out of it. I've overlooked your strange behavior until now, but not this time. Saving Lien is incredibly dangerous. If you're caught, you'll be executed on the spot." He walked away after leaving a final warning. "Please don't be foolish, Aili. That's a warning, not advice." Aili muttered, "I understand, but I don't know how I feel." He turned away. And in that moment, an invisible line was drawn between the two friends, a line neither of them was aware of. Luca worried, thinking, because of that damned Victima, even though I don't want to go, I can see he's lying. He'll do whatever it takes to save Lien if he finds her. As a good friend, Luca would always prioritize protecting his friend, no matter how ruthless he had to be. And in this moment, he wasn't even aware of his own thoughts. Lien Zaman has to die for Aili. Whether he agrees or not, it has to be done. The private jet soared through the sky, carrying Luca's resolve. "Please, Lien Zaman, disappear in this chaos and don't ever meet Aili again." Luca slowly followed the jet with his gaze. He knew he had longed for this. Luca sat in heavy silence, his eyes thoughtful and serious as he pondered. The most important things are the head and the heart. Holding the iron helmet in his hands, he affirmed to himself, as long as these two aren't blown away, an Imperial Guard won't die. As long as their breathing and blood is still reaching the brain, the Empire will use Bow Company's technology to save them by any means necessary. Koza calmly approached and called out, "Platoon Leader Luca." He responded coldly, "Say what you want to say." Koza suddenly offered praise. "I know you're more capable than anyone. I always carefully check the records of my superiors." Luca, unfazed, coldly replied, So, in the harsh atmosphere of the battlefield, the rumbling of combat vehicles grew louder. Koza sincerely advised, when we enter actual combat, I hope you'll listen to my advice. I've served the Imperial Army for 10 years. While I'm not your equal, I'm not useless either. Luca remained silent for a moment, his face expressionless. Don't worry about that. If it's useful advice, I'll listen, no matter who it's from. Hearing this, Koza felt reassured and bowed his head respectfully, saying, Thank you, sir. The deafening grinding sounds of armored vehicles echoed across the rough terrain. A convoy of combat vehicles simultaneously headed towards the tower, which was protected by a powerful, massive blue magical barrier. The heavy steel doors of the vehicles opened, revealing a blinding light. From that light, steel warriors in imposing powered armor suits emerged one after another. The doors slowly lowered, forming ramps, and slammed onto the ground. A brigade of black armored soldiers marched down the ramps with powerful strides. Their eyes gleamed with a ferocious light. They were the Mimidin full-body armored brigade in their prototype armor. Luca watched intently, slightly impressed. Those are the mass-produced Mimidin armor units. He sat in the vehicle with the other soldiers, observing the battle situation on a 3D screen, mentally preparing. When the armored brigade's turrets are destroyed, it'll be our turn. An announcement rang out. Commence bombardment. Simultaneously, the armor on the backs of the full-body armored brigade emitted beams of light. The beams stabilized into thick, glowing rays of light. They created propulsion, launching the armored warriors into the air with incredible speed, their bodies flashing brightly. The entire force flew in an arc, converging on a single point. In a flash, they accelerated, aiming straight for the shielded turret. In the blink of an eye, the entire force was nearly upon the protective barrier. Suddenly, a large green beam flashed from within 4 large circles at each corner of the platform. The beam seemed to absorb the surrounding magical energy, forming swirling vortexes that pulled towards the center, growing larger and larger. Quickly, it formed a massive beam of light, as if capable of annihilating everything. The light was very close, flashing and reflecting off every piece of armor on the armored troops. Following that, a warrior suddenly lost momentum and tilted, as if experiencing a significant shock from behind. Immediately afterward, the lower part of their armor exploded, shattering into small, burning fragments that scattered everywhere. This was due to the tower continuously counterattacking with powerful magic blasts. Each hit obliterated an armored warrior, forcing the remaining ones to desperately dodge. But soon after, unable to evade any longer, they were blown apart as the emitted beams were too large and seemed to have some sort of tracking capability. Another brigade, yet to approach, hovered in the air from a great distance. The shoulder armor of the remaining warriors opening to reveal bombs with formidable destructive power. Without hesitation, a barrage of bombs launched like a volley of missiles aimed directly at the tower. The sheer number of bombs detonating created an earth-shattering explosion, causing swirling gales. The battle scene was obscured by a terrifying, fiery red smoke that lingered in the air. Then, a powerful gust of wind swept through, gradually dispersing the smoke that had obscured everything. Suddenly, some entity slowly emerged from behind the smoke and dust, with 2 red lights flashing. Those 2 red points moved, clearly depicting a pair of menacing eyes emitting bright red rays. As the smoke cleared, it was an armored warrior, completely unscathed, staring straight ahead. It swiftly dodged a massive magic blast fire from the tower the moment it locked onto its target. Putting full power into the engine on its back, it flew straight ahead at breakneck speed. In the warrior's hand was a gleaming spear with a sharp, pointed tip that looked incredibly powerful. In an instant, it flew straight to its destination, wielding the spear and thrusting it powerfully down into the blue protective barrier. That immense force caused a small crack in the protective barrier, and the magic power on it fluctuated. Without hesitation, all the other armored warriors charged in with the same attack, looking like meteors crashing down. Under such a concerted attack, the protective barrier could hardly hold and shattered. The armored warriors successfully penetrated the defenses. Luca, who had been observing the whole time, tensed up. Mimidin successfully entered the fortress. Now, the most crucial thing is whether they can disable the magic tower. Continuing to observe the intense battle, warriors rushed towards the top of the tower, some being shot down, others still advancing. Luca thought to himself, if Mimidin fails to disable the magic tower, the situation on the battlefield will become difficult. According to the Strategic Computer's assessment, the estimated time to disable the magic tower is 1 minute after Mimidin's infiltration. The soldiers, also tense, watched with the same thoughts as Luca. If Mimidin can't deal with the magic tower, our forces will suffer heavy losses before we can advance. All right, the battlefield suddenly fell silent. The scene plunged into darkness. Then, gradually, light emerged along with muffled sounds. A joyous announcement rang out. The turret has been neutralized. Proceeding to the next phase. Along with the announcement, the scene shifted to smoking, ravaged towers. The soldiers inside the vehicle cheered at their first victory. Luca observed the scene, silently assessing. The battlefield is a place of risk and tragedy, but it's also a place that pumps you full of adrenaline. He smirked, and I'm no exception. I'm also someone who finds joy and a sense of accomplishment right here in this hell. If I didn't, I would have gone insane long ago. He put on his helmet and, as he advanced with his comrades out of the doorway bathed in a glorious light, said, "Let's go." Inwardly, he affirmed, "It's time to prove my abilities." A 3D model of the tower appeared with red arrows pointing from multiple directions. This is the plan for the infantry platoons to advance simultaneously from all sides of the fortress. Command wants to seal off all escape routes for the rebels. Below the tower model was a depiction of a tunnel. Luca explained to himself, "The underground tunnels of the Akane fortress have a maze-like structure with an explored depth of at least 100 meters. Even though we have underground maps from previous surveys, the rebels have made modifications inside, so their accuracy is uncertain." The soldiers were now on the battlefield, some with shields, others with guns, rolling and dodging exploding shells. Luca quickly darted forward, approaching a door, and wondered aloud. Did they narrow the entrance to the underground facility to prevent the armored units from entering? According to the plan, they had successfully made their initial entry into the deep, dark basement. Luca and his comrades remained vigilant, carefully observing their surroundings. The path was dusty, with plants and moss growing everywhere. Ahead, the path split in two. One side emitted light, while the other stretched into darkness, unclear what lay ahead. Luca lowered his faceplate and announced, "From now on, I'll take the lead." Koza, holding his gun right behind him, worriedly objected. "In this place, leading is very dangerous, platoon leader. There's a high chance of encountering traps or ambushes." Luca turned and asked indifferently, "Are you worried that if I die, you'll be punished?" Koza didn't deny it, admitting, "To be frank, yes. If you're aware of that, then." Luca didn't bother listening, quickly putting his helmet back on, his expression stern and angry as he interrupted, "I don't care what happens after I die, Koza. Whether you or your platoon get demoted or have your pay docked isn't my concern." He immediately surged forward, giving a quick order that prevented Koza from saying anything more. "I repeat, I'll take the lead. Follow close behind." Koza gritted his teeth, uneasy and slightly afraid. "I feel a chill down my spine like a platoon's guns are pointed at the back of my neck. But there's no time to worry about that now. I need to meet Lien Zaman before Iloi and settle everything." Luca, continuing forward, thought of Lien Zaman and then considered, Iloi must be entering from a different route and somewhere in the fortress by now. Thinking of Iloi, who was probably seriously commanding, he thought to himself, if he's willing to sacrifice his own platoon to advance, he could break through this line very quickly. I could also use my men to advance quickly, but Luca looked back at his squad members and reminded himself, I can't sacrifice these loyal soldiers for my own feelings. I have to take on this danger myself. He rushed forward, oblivious to a large, wall-mounted gun barrel pointed directly at him. Koza noticed it and, unable to shout, screamed internally, "Platoon leader Luca?" He quickly rushed towards Luca with the others, yelling, "Activate chili combat technique. Maximum sensory boost." Luca then focused so intensely that his gaze became unfocused, his whole body seemingly imbued with an immense power. He swung his sword in a magnificent arc so fast it left afterimages, cleaving the gun barrel in two in the blink of an eye. His eyes widened as he felt the surge of power enhancing every sense in his body. Sight, hearing, touch, smell, and even taste. Luca licked his lips, smirking to himself, WY tasting the chemicals in the air, I can gather a lot of information. Instantly, he moved like a bolt of lightning, so fast he was a blur. The walls were no obstacle as he leaped and slashed through every barrier. All the squad members were astonished. As he advanced, Luca thought, my heart is pounding. I can feel my blood vessels dilating, blood pumping nonstop to deliver glucose to my brain. The pressure in my head is exhilarating. Immersed in this power, he began to feel dissatisfied with everything around him. Everything was irritating, even the sluggish movements of his platoon. He wanted to punch Koza in the face. Behind his mask, Luca's expression was a mixture of frenzy, fear, and exhilaration as he thought, I only vaguely understood this before, but now I truly feel it. This is why prolonged use of the chili combat technique affects the nervous system. In the blink of an eye, he reached the end of the tunnel where another door stood. Behind the door, 3 enemy soldiers were cautiously advancing. Suddenly, one of them sensed something approaching and felt a surge of panic. The next instant, a dark figure kicked the door open, the force sending the soldier flying. The others were stunned, unable to react as they watched their comrade propelled through the air. Before them stood a figure clad in jet black armor with red accents. looking powerful and ferocious. Upon seeing him, the enemy soldiers immediately raised their weapons in alarm. Luca calmly raised his sword. In response, they opened fire. With his senses heightened to their peak, Luca gritted his teeth and glared furiously. He unleashed a flurry of dazzling sword strikes, each faster than the bullets, swiftly deflecting every shot. Standing amidst the smoke from the gunfire, Luca hefted his glowing red sword, preparing to charge. They continued firing, trying to stop him, but he effortlessly dodged, leaving only after-images of his sword-wielding form behind. In a flash, he was upon one of them, raising his sword and swiftly decapitating him with a single, clean stroke. The head flew through the air, spinning a few times before landing. But even in death, there was no peace. Luca promptly used the severed head as a makeshift football, kicking it hard, sending it flying straight into the face of the white bandana-wearing soldier. The impact left his forehead bloodied, his hands trembling too much to hold his gun. Seizing the opportunity, Luca rushed forward, claiming another head to even the score. The last remaining soldier screamed in terror, wildly firing his cannon. Luca carefully watched the incoming projectile. His focus was so intense that everything seemed to slow down. The large, spiraling cannonball hurtled towards him, but it felt agonizingly slow. Without hesitation, Luca sliced the cannonball in half, splitting the very frame of reality. A massive explosion erupted, the two halves of the projectile blasting outwards with a terrifying figure standing at the center. The shockwave from the blast resembled demonic wings, unleashing a furious gale. The enemy soldier stared in disbelief, his vision obscured by the swirling dust and debris. Suddenly, a pair of terrifyingly furious eyes materialized within the dust cloud. Luca, his battle armor unscathed, emerged from the smoke and charged forward. The soldier cried out in terror. Meeting the same fate as his comrades, he received a swift, horizontal slash across the neck from Luca's blade. Blood sprayed like a waterfall. Just then, Luca's own soldiers arrived, witnessing the gruesome scene. Koza, speechless with horror, simply stared, beads of sweat dotting his face. Before him lay a scene of utter devastation. Bodies and blood littered the floor at the feet of a seemingly crazed warlord, his sword dripping with gore. Luca turned to him and complained, "Koza, what are you standing around for?" Blood continued to drip from his sword as he spoke, his voice calm, an unwavering move. "Don't fall behind. Stay close." Just then, a group of enemy soldiers, faces tense with fear, opened fire. They formed a wide arc, continuously firing at the wall where Luca and his squad took cover. Luca glanced past the wall, surprised. "I never thought there'd be such a vast space underground. So this is where those bastards set up their defensive position." He produced a strange, hovering mechanical device, thinking to himself, "We've penetrated quite deep into enemy territory. We should find those fleeing nobles soon." Enough. With that, he sent the device flying forward. Its front section housed a camera encased within a protective shell. The device ascended, then stopped, emitting a buzzing sound. A red light flashed from the center of the camera lens, scanning the area. A sensor image of the entire surrounding area was transmitted directly into Luca's mind, giving him a comprehensive overview and confirming his suspicions. The defensive line appeared to consist of roughly 100 soldiers. Behind them were non-combatants who had retreated to support the rear lines. Lien was probably among them. A soldier from Luca's squad spoke up. "It seems our advance has been quite rapid compared to the other squads, sir. Should we slow down and wait to regroup with the others, sir?" Luca considered the suggestion that's a valid point, especially since I can't think as clearly as usual after expending so much energy using the technique. Chilly technique. Suddenly, a massive flash of light erupted from behind the wall, catching his attention. At the same time, the distinct sound of continuous gunfire reached his ears. Luca quickly concluded, "This gunfire, it doesn't seem to be aimed at us." The scene behind the wall was chaotic. Half of the enemy soldiers were wary of him, while the other half were turned, firing at something else. Luca surmised there must be some disorder behind the enemy lines. This means another squad has bypassed us and is already fighting inside. If it's not my squad, it must be him. Luca knew exactly who was attacking. Seizing the opportunity, he commanded his soldiers to advance quickly, shouting, "Their firepower is split between the front and rear. This is our chance to attack." They expertly formed a defensive formation, 2 men in front with shields absorbing the barrage of enemy fire, while Luca and the others held their weapons, waiting for the right moment to strike. However, the enemy fire was too intense. The shields began to crack and splinter under the onslaught. Facing the blinding muzzle flashes, the 2 shield bearers shouted, "Platoon leader, the shields won't hold much longer." Luca remained calm and instructed, hold on. We can't attack yet. Crouching behind the shields, he thought, they have too much firepower. We need to maintain a solid defense for now. Any lapse could lead to casualties. He scanned the frenzied enemy soldiers wielding their massive weapons. There are about 8 heavy weapons, he assessed. Observing the weapons' loading mechanisms as they paused to reload, he realized the moment they finish a volley and reload is our chance. Now's our chance, he thought, launching himself into the air. When they focus their fire on me, seize the opportunity to attack. Luca's figure soared above the enemy. They immediately reacted, aiming their weapons upwards. Cozy yelled, his face red with alarm. Captain, look out! A barrage of bullets targeted Luca, but they failed to inflict significant damage. Shielding himself effortlessly, Luca thought those rifles pose no real threat. Their bullets can't penetrate my armor. First things first, he thought as his side armor panels shifted, revealing something within. In a flash, he drew a pair of intricately designed, powerful-looking guns. His eyes narrowed with determination that I need to take out those heavy weapons. He immediately unleashed a barrage of powerful shots from above, obliterating the enemy's heavy weapons. Then he dropped straight down, releasing one of his guns, letting it spin beneath him as he fell. Luca landed hard in the center of the enemy, effectively surrounding them single-handedly. Bringing his remaining guns together, he calculated, I've closed the distance. They can't fire recklessly now. Before the stunned enemy soldiers could react, Luca swung his combined weapons, transforming them into a gleaming red blade that sliced through the legs of the 2 nearest enemies. Taking advantage of the opportunity, his platoon, now close behind, opened fire continuously. Luca smirked. Now you'll die with me. The gunfire roared, intense and blinding, before gradually fading into silence. A while later, a young enemy soldier with spiky white hair raised his hands in surrender, shouting, "We surrender." The entire enemy force now knelt in submission, completely suppressed. Luca calmly walked forward, saying to Koza, tie them up first. Koza agreed, yes, platoon leader. Suddenly, Luca stopped, his brow furrowed, his eyes filled with despair as he stared ahead. Before him, in the thick smoke and dust, lay the bodies of his fellow soldiers, a truly horrific sight. He bent down, trying to remain calm as he checked the pulse of one soldier. This is one of Eilid's men, he concluded. As expected, Eilid's squad attacked first to distract the enemy. They advanced too quickly, without proper defense, leading to many of their comrades being seriously wounded and killed. Luca gritted his teeth in anger. I don't understand why you had to do that. Were you so desperate that you had to sacrifice your own men like this? You damn fool. Eilid Kathika, this was a terrible decision. Luca struggled internally, torn between his loyalty to the Empire and his desire to help Eilid. If I have to choose between the two, he thought, I'll have to abandon the other. He thought of his friend, driven to madness, and felt a pang of anguish. This kind of conflict puts me in a difficult position. Luca clenched his fist, resolving, if I see Lianjamon, I'll have to take her down immediately. That way, even if Eilid hates me for it, I can still prevent him from becoming a traitor and save his life. That's my only option now. He stood silently, his back burdened with pain and responsibility. Koza, keep these prisoners under control until the other squads arrive to take them into custody. I'm leaving the situation here to you. He expected a simple yes, but Koza's serious tone startled him. Platoon leader, Koza began, you are an outstanding soldier on the battlefield. Today's battle was not only admirable, but also astonishing. Luca, not in the mood for praise, interrupted. If you're going to say those things, don't bother. Koza continued, undeterred, but as an excellent commander, you still have one shortcoming. Luca faced him directly, retorting, if I hadn't made those decisions, many more of our comrades would have fallen. I think I did well, achieving such a victory. So what suggestions do you have? Koza replied, you may be a skilled fighter, but that's only on an individual level. Your tactics, however, seem less than ideal. He looked at Luca with a stern gaze. Such a dictatorial and self-centered approach will never make you a truly excellent commander. Luca's eyes widened. He couldn't remain silent any longer. He retorted bitterly, my methods are dictatorial and self-centered because everyone else is not strong enough. I wanted to attack quickly and decisively, but they couldn't keep up. Looking at his sluggish and weary subordinates, he complained, I wish everyone could achieve similar feats and support me in this campaign. Look, but everyone isn't strong enough yet to do what I want. Personally, I don't want to show off my power and put everyone in danger. Therefore, I need to make risky decisions to give everyone a better chance. He closed his eyes in frustration, turned his back, and walked away as he continued. If you want to help me, It's best for everyone to train hard. When you're strong enough, then you'll get to prove yourselves on the battlefield. That's what I want most from everyone. Please remember that. I've memorized what you said. Koza was a little taken aback when Luca suddenly spoke up, thinking he had finished, but Luca's dependable figure walked away, waving goodbye as he said, I'll also remember your advice. If I make any mistakes in the future, please tell me. I'll think about it and learn from them. Koza closed his eyes and sighed, silently acknowledging he really is both arrogant and adaptable to every situation. He then raised his hand to his chest and bowed respectfully. Good luck. Luca, now far from the area, accelerated, rushing forward. He swept through every corner of the tunnel, assessing the situation. The walls are worn from gunfire, bullet holes everywhere, and the bodies of the enemy fallen in many places during this fierce battle. He recalled the tunnel layout and observed the paths are full of difficulties and enemy traps. But the soldiers did their job well, advancing deep into the residential area and wiping out the rebel forces. Painfully remembering the peaceful times spent talking with his close friend under the quiet night sky, Luca lamented, I have to admit, Ali wasn't just a good comrade, but also a friend. He was a true friend I could really talk to comfortably without constraint. Returning to reality, looking at the dead soldiers scattered around, Luca desperately called out in his thoughts, Ailey, but are you sacrificing these soldiers for your own personal goals now? Bodies piled up everywhere. These soldiers don't deserve to die like this. He was silently disappointed in his friend, whose whereabouts were unknown, that a wise commander always distinguishes right from wrong. They wouldn't put their soldiers in such danger. Suspecting that Ailey was now desperately trying to escape with Lien, he felt it was pointless. Even if you find Lien now, how do you plan to help her escape? Lien will certainly die. Luca pondered, his eyes tinged with sadness. I understand you're attached because you love her so much, but you don't need to die for her like this. You're just desperate and losing control because of your actions. He was rushing forward when he suddenly heard a coughing sound and stopped. He glanced down and saw a head lying there alone. It was the head of a mechanical body, and it was still alive. Wires frayed from its neck. It desperately cried out, I surrender. I'm from the Jamon family. Luca said coldly, whether you surrender or not is irrelevant to me. Where did Lien Jamon go? The head, with a sad look, glanced in another direction and replied, I don't know where that person is. Luca glared angrily, instantly recognizing the telltale reaction of a liar as the man's eyes flickered away. In a flash, Luca slammed his heel down on the mechanical head, eliciting a desperate shriek. I surrender. Have mercy. Stop. What are you doing? Luca leaned down menacingly. This is your last chance. Tell me where Lien Jamon is. The head screamed. Maybe in the basement? Luca wasn't fooled. Why? If you were hiding, you'd go up, wouldn't you? Unless there's an escape route down there. The head sputtered. I don't know. As a direct descendant, there are many important things I'm not privy to. Unhappy with the answer, Luca pressed his heel down harder. Have you seen Ailey Kathika? Humiliated and in pain, the head couldn't hold back tears of frustration. He's the reason I'm in this mess. The more he protested, the harder Luca pressed. That madman. We were acquainted. I surrendered. And yet he did this to me. Luca, tired of listening, stomped down with all his might. The head shattered, spraying blood like a geyser. He walked away from the pathetic remains. Consider this a mercy. A quick death is a small blessing. A red glint of madness flashed in the slits of Luca's visor. Behind a mask, his face was likely impassive. I hate this senseless slaughter, he thought, but today I feel no remorse, no pity. This is the reality of war. He continued down the tunnel, a bright light beckoning from the exit ahead. The sounds of gunfire and screams grew closer. His hand tightened around his still smoking heavy gun. Ailey, he thought, his heart clenching. As he neared the entrance, a lavish dining hall came into view, a stark contrast to the armored corpses scattered across the floor. A lone figure stood silently in the distance. If you've reached a point of no return, Luca wondered despairingly, what will I do with you? Luca stepped fully into the dining hall. A familiar yet alien figure stood with their back to him, atop a large, overturned table. The bodies of motionless soldiers lay scattered around. Having fought alongside his close friend through thick and thin, Luca's outward cheerfulness masked a deep-seated unease about Ailey. With the holy emblem of the Axer Empire heavy on his heart, he worried, what if he acts against the Empire? Luca strode resolutely across the entrance, his mind made up. The time has come to make my choice. He entered the brightly lit dining hall, ignoring the blood and bodies, his face grim, his gaze fixed ahead. Ailey, he called out to the figure, standing listlessly on the table. Ailey, battered and bruised, didn't move. He simply pushed up the faceplate of his helmet with a click. Turning his head slightly, Ailey spoke apathetically. "You've arrived, Luca." Luca glanced down at the body at his feet and rebuked. "You finally did it. You sent your subordinates to their deaths for your own ends." Luca looked up, his gaze drawn to a panicked group huddled together in a corner of the hall. He quickly noticed an older man with white hair and others surrounding a trembling girl with long silver hair. He recognized them. Hugo Zaman, the head of the Zaman family, was there with his trusted subordinates. Even Lien was present. Luca gritted his teeth, his eyes burning with anger. "For a trivial woman, you've gone this far?" Ailey didn't respond, instead drawing a sword from a sheath on his lower leg. "I doubt you can overlook this now, can you?" he said. The atmosphere immediately grew heavy with tension. Ailey held a gun in one hand and a large sword in the other, clad in his black and white full-body armor. His cold gaze held a clear challenge. "Draw your weapon, Luca." Luca didn't back down. He assumed a fighting stance, his sword already raised, his grip tight on the hilt. "You need to be taught a lesson," he said, his voice filled with anger. The air crackled with tension over the pile of bodies. Both men silently watched each other, ready to strike at any moment. Luca held his sword steady, his gaze fixed on Ailey. "This is a fight to the death with Ailey. I can't afford any mercy if I want to win. In battles like these, countless unforeseen events can occur." Luca frowned, his mechanical eye flicking to the side, scanning for information. He saw Lien and the Zaman family head being escorted towards an escape route. "Even so, I can't take him down quickly. By then, the Zaman family will surely escape." Lowering his center of gravity into a fighting stance, Luca made his decision. "Therefore, I need to take down the Zaman family first. Even if it makes me Ailey's sworn enemy, at least I'll have completed my mission." His expression hardened, devoid of emotion. Suddenly, Ailey spoke, as if reading Luca's mind, surprising him. "Are you planning to ignore me and attack the Zamans?" As he finished speaking, Ailey fired a shot at Luca's position, but Luca leaped to the side, dodging the bullet. Ailey didn't hesitate, pursuing Luca, who was sprinting along the dining table. He fired repeatedly, but couldn't keep up with Luca's speed. Ailey gritted his teeth in frustration, keeping his gun trained on Luca. Luca, however, wasn't overly worried. Predicting Ailey's attacks isn't difficult, but this is just his opening act. The real challenge is yet to come. As Luca accelerated, red lines of light appeared on his armor, connecting seamlessly. He'd activated them intentionally. "I end this fight. I have to maximize my cybernetic bandwidth to reach my top speed." He easily dodged the bullets, nearly reaching the Zaman family's guards. "This way, I can bypass Ailey and eliminate the Zamans directly." The two silver-haired guards didn't panic. They aimed their guns at the approaching Luca, their eyes filled with rage. Ailey roared furiously, "Stop," and fired a powerful shot. Luca quickly lowered his center of gravity and raised his sword in a flash in front of the guards. Then, a brilliant crimson slash erupted. Everything happened so fast that the bullets still hung in the air, unable to reach him. In a flash, Luca spun around, his sword raised to meet the incoming bullet. Calmly and skillfully, he angled his blade across the projectile's path. Luca's calculations and reactions were incredibly swift. The bullet slammed into the flat of his sword, the force of the impact creating a shower of sparks. He expertly used the momentum to spin the blade, deliberately altering the bullet's trajectory. This flurry of insane movements occurred literally in the blink of an eye. The deflected bullet, now ricocheting wildly, struck the remaining guard, who gaped in shock, unable to react. The impact sent him sprawling, blood spraying. Luca spun back, unfazed, and charged directly towards his target. The head of the Zaman family, seeing the approaching demon, flailed his arms in terror and screamed. In a blur, Luca's sword thrust upwards, impaling him through the chin, turning his head into a gruesome, syrup-soaked kebab. The sword, lodged in his head and pointing skyward, paused momentarily. Then, Luca, following through with emotion, swung the blade downwards, slicing through the old man's jaw and simultaneously slashing across the chest of the confidant standing beside him. Blood gushed forth as Lien watched in stunned silence. Luca withdrew his sword, raising it in a threatening stance as he looked at the remaining girl before him. Only Lien remained. Blood sprayed everywhere as Lien stared in shock. Luca retracted his sword, raising it menacingly towards the remaining girl. Now, only Lien was left. At that moment, Ailey desperately charged from behind, yelling "Luca!" Unfazed, Luca was certain Ailey would try to stop him. But it's too late. He thought that MY's speed is too great. He can't possibly stop me. Killing Lien will be simple. Recalling their first shy encounter, Luca felt a pang of anger as he assessed her, Lien Zaman, the girl who had approached him with her own agenda. It had been an approach with good intentions, but his mission remained paramount. He lunged forward like a whirlwind, glaring menacingly as he pointed the sharp tip of his sword towards her motionless body, his resolve firm that I'll make it quick so she won't suffer. He decided that's all I can do for her now. As he charged, Luca glanced at her face one last time. Suddenly, he faltered, startled by the wide eyes reflecting a strange expression. Was she smiling? Luca was bewildered. Lien Zamin's face was a mixture of emotions. She grinned broadly as tears streamed down her face, her eyebrows furrowed in a fleeting expression of despair. Suddenly, a furious roar echoed, screaming his name. Luca! Ailui, his face contorted with rage and helplessness, had closed the distance. He threw his entire weight into Luca's abdomen, pushing him away from Lien. The force of the impact sent both of them flying backwards into the wall. Lien, her face etched with fear and tears still in her eyes, turned back in a panic. Luca and Ailui, now piled on top of each other, struggled fiercely, their swords locked. Luca spoke. Ailui, you saw her face, didn't you? Her family just died, and she's smiling. Ailui, on top, gritted his teeth and remained silent. He then retorted, defending her. Despite Luca's stunned disbelief, it's not strange. It's because she's finally free from their control. Her family only ever wanted her to enter a political marriage. She was just a tool for them to achieve their goals. Luca let out a heavy sigh of frustration. He brought his knee up sharply into Ailui's stomach and yelled, "What the hell are you talking about?" Ailui was thrown back, clutching his stomach in pain and trembling, while Luca steadied himself. He wiped his face with his hand and cursed, "Don't be so stupid. She's just a rebel too." Lien, with a melancholic expression, came to Ailui's side, supporting him. He clutched his stomach in pain and retorted, "Luca, you don't know anything. Their family was labeled as rebels, but they never actually revolted. The higher-ups fabricated the story to purge their family." Bodies were still scattered across the hallway of the tunnel. Ailui continued, "If they really wanted to rebel, wouldn't their defenses be more substantial? If they wanted to thoroughly oppose the Empire, they would have sought out Kojite or Bellado, instead of just having a few ordinary soldiers like this." Luca pursed his lips and fell silent, unable to deny the truth inwardly. He's right. Recalling the events that had transpired, he deduced, infiltrating Akane Fortress is supposed to be extremely difficult, yet it seemed remarkably easy for these rebels. However, the scale of the uprising is too small considering the potential of these three families. If they wanted to rebel, why didn't they ally with powerful external forces like Kojite or Bellado? Those forces could have fully supported them. Luca, troubled, maintained a stern expression. What now? He watched Lien solicitously help Ailui up, worried. Even if that's true, what does it change? If this continues, Ailui, you'll die along with Lien. Lien, silent until now, furrowed her brows in frustration and looked up at Luca. She suddenly spoke. "My father wasn't entirely innocent. He discovered the Akane artifact, but didn't report it to the Empire." Ailui, panicked, quickly stopped her. "Lien, this isn't the time to talk about that." She turned and bent down, searching a body, making Luca wary. She continued, "This is probably the reason the Empire targeted our family and branded us as rebels." Lien pulled out a dazzling, beautiful, bright blue cubic artifact, the Akane artifact. Thanks to its power, the legendary fortress, dormant for thousands of years, can be reactivated. Luca, suspicious, frowned at her and asked, "What are you saying this for?" Lien spoke resolutely. "Ultimately, you haven't killed me yet. It's not out of guilt, but because you're afraid that killing me will cause conflict with Ailui, right?" Luca was stunned into silence, his thoughts exposed. Ailui slumped slightly, lost in thought. Lien continued, "You know that Ailui can't return to his old life in the Empire anymore." She firmly presented her argument to the fearsome man before her. "Right now here, we have choices." She held up the Akane cube authoritatively, stating with conviction, "If we use this artifact, we can teleport inside the legendary fortress. That way, Ailui and I can both escape the Empire safely. Help us, Luca!" Lien's gaze was sharp and profound, as if seeing into his soul. Luca stared at the artifact in her hand, his expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief, unsure of what to do. Luca stared in astonishment at the cube. Lien held it in her hand. A moment later, Luca asked, "Is there a teleportation device?" Lien calmly replied, "Yes, deep beneath the fortress, there's a teleportation device. It might be an escape route created in case the fortress falls. You can stab me if you don't believe me. I really don't want to see Ailui die protecting me. But if we can use this Akane artifact to activate the teleportation device, we can leave the Empire, and you can just say you never saw us." Hearing this, Luca retorted, "Do you think the Imperial Army would just leave a device like that alone?" Lien calmly answered, "Only the direct descendants of the Zaman family know about the existence of that tunnel. If we go deep underground, it'll be very safe." Luca frowned in thought. "Honestly, I'm tempted. I don't care about Lien's life or death, but I have to think about what's best for Ailui." Luca thought back to fighting alongside Ailui. Ailui already wanted to leave the Empire. with his incompatible ideologies. Sooner or later, he'd be executed. Fortunately, this is a battlefield, so faking his disappearance or death will be easier. Thinking this, Luca looked at Ailui and nodded, then sheathed his sword. As Ailui started to speak, Luca interrupted him. Quiet, Ailui. Promise me one thing. If there's no teleportation device like Lien said, or if it doesn't work. Luca looked at him seriously. You won't stop me. You heard her. Luca added softly. Lien doesn't want you in danger either. Ailui parted his lips in silence, then looked towards Lien. Her face, a mix of adorable, pitiful, and strong, was looking back at him. Ailui felt a pang of sadness, but he bit his lip and replied, All right, I promise, Luca. The three of them cautiously descended the stairs, the entrance to the tunnel. Luca led the way, checking for danger, while Ailui guarded the rear. As he checked the path, Luca thought to himself, I've gone mad. Not only am I not stopping Ailui, but I'm escorting Lien Zaman. If the other suppression squad see us, we're done for. Luca looked towards Lien and asked, the teleportation device, or whatever. But before he could finish his sentence, Lien interrupted, Wait, Luca. He turned back to see Lien wiping the blood from Ailui's face with a handkerchief. As she wiped, she said, Ailui, let's wipe the blood away before it dries. Seeing this, Luca said with displeasure, Hey, are you two planning to get married as soon as we leave this place? Hearing this, Ailui grabbed Lien's hand, stopping her. Tears welled up in her eyes as she said, I'm sorry, Ailui. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Ailui quickly comforted her, Don't worry. You're the one who taught me about the outside world. Lien asked in surprise, Just for that reason. Ailui continued, To me, it's not an ordinary reason. It changed my entire worldview. Thanks to you, I understand the cause of the discontent and turmoil within me. Thanks to you, I would have gone mad a long time ago. I'm not a freak, just different. Both Lien and Luca were surprised by Ailui's confession. Luca glanced at Ailui, now understanding that Lien was the one who influenced Ailui's incompatible ideologies. That ideology is like a disease spreading among people and gradually corroding the empire from within. If these ideas are allowed to spread, the empire will collapse or constantly face a state of decline and will be attacked and destroyed by the Bila Federation or the Holy Kojite Alliance. Luca didn't want to see the empire collapse. He thought if necessary, he would personally eliminate those seeds, even if it was Ailui. He raised his fist, determined in his thoughts. I'm not a dangerous element. His face hardened, taking a deep breath, his hand gripping the tunnel wall. By now, the three of them had reached the end of the stairs and turned into the tunnel. Luca breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, I can finally relax. Lien also leaned on her knees to rest for a moment and said, Like I said, only direct descendants know about this tunnel. With a maze-like structure like this, it won't be easy to find. Lien thought of her father. Her father had been granted permission to research the ruins, but he hadn't reported anything because he had developed excessive ambition when he discovered how the fortress operated. But everything was within the Emperor's control. After hearing Lien finish, Luca impatiently asked, More importantly, how much longer until we get there? Lien pointed forward and replied, We'll get there if we go a little further along this way. Thank you, Luca, for letting us go. Luca turned and walked forward, saying, I'm just settling an old debt with Ailui. Next time we meet, I'll skewer both you and Ailui. Ailui looked at Luca with a saddened gaze and said, Take care, Luca. Lien continued, If we successfully escape from here, I'll go to Border City. If we get separated, let's meet there. Lien also asked Luca if he wanted to leave the empire. But before she could finish her sentence, Luca raised his hand and interrupted, refusing because he wasn't interested. Ailui mumbled the name of the city Lien wanted to go to. Luca brought his hand to his forehead, his mind in turmoil. He sighed, This is exhausting. Deciding to help Ailui was a misjudgment while my mind was disturbed. Now is not the time to rest. I need to think of a way to report this after it's over. Fortunately, the guard captain thinks highly of me. Only I can handle the Kinnan reconnaissance. Both Ailui and Lien are just ordinary students and noble ladies, not important figures. I won't go any deeper into this. The three of them continued forward. Approaching a door, Luca glanced at Ailui and said, Ailui, be prepared. If there's no teleportation device, it all ends here. Ailui looked seriously at Luca and nodded. Luca reached out and pressed the button to open the door. A blue halo appeared, making Luca feel uneasy. He thought, I need to find the source of this unease. The door slowly opened, drawing Luca's thoughts along with it. The cause was definitely behind the door. Luca stared inside. The lights were on inside, which wasn't strange, since when the fortress was active, all the lighting systems would be on. But the light from inside was so bright that he had to close his eyes. He thought, eliminate all other senses, focus on smell. He sensed first the fresh, metallic scent of blood, then the strong smell of oil and metal. Luca tensely bit his lip. This place doesn't have the characteristic body odor of living beings. He couldn't hold back any longer and opened his eyes wide to observe. Inside, there wasn't a teleportation device, but 4 royal guards. Luca was startled, thinking to himself, we're done for. Facing 1 guard without armor is a death sentence, let alone 4. I thought I could arrange for them to escape and live the life Ailey wanted. Was it all just a sweet dream? He wanted to turn the tables. He thought, right now, there's only one way. Stab Lien immediately. Even if I'm suspected, there's still a chance to convince my superiors. But if Lien dies, will Ailey stay calm? If he attacks the guards in a frenzy, it's all over. At that moment, the 4 guards turned simultaneously and looked towards the 3 of them. Luca knew he couldn't hesitate any longer. They'd been spotted. There was no more time. Hesitation would only increase suspicion. This was his last chance. He turned to strike Lien, but someone was faster. A candy bullet shot from behind, hitting Lien in the head. She collapsed, blood and tears mixing in her eyes. As Luca and the guard stared in shock, it was Ailey who fired, the gun still smoking in his hand. One guard asked, Luca and Ailey? What was that gunshot? Ailey holstered his weapon and calmly replied, I executed a worthless prisoner. A guard approached and asked, you brought rebels here without knowing they were rebels? Ailey, report the situation from the beginning. Then, everything will be decided. Ailey responded, all right. As the guards moved away, Ailey stared at Lien's body for a moment before turning and following them. Luca was left standing, rooted to the spot before Lien's corpse. The scene shifted to Himiliat's office. He looked at Luca and praised, excellent work, Squad 21 Captain Luca. Luca, standing opposite him with his hands clasped behind his back, replied, thank you, Captain. Himiliat looked at the control panel and continued, Korza always sings your praises, especially regarding your combat abilities. You're a captain and the best student he's ever seen. However, he believes you need to improve your relationships with your subordinates. If you need to learn how to manage them, seek out Kinnan. According to the report, you didn't execute Lien Zaman immediately, but brought her to the lowest level. Did you have a particular reason for choosing Lien as a guide? Luca, hearing the question, worriedly thought, it's finally here. He answered, Sir, Ailey and I planned to seize the teleportation device to prevent the rebels from escaping. As he spoke, he thought of Lien, that we believe that capturing someone with weak combat abilities like Lien Zaman was the most logical choice to minimize casualties. Himiliat listened to his explanation and said, a reasonable assessment. But Luca, I have another question. Luca quickly replied, you must be referring to my relationship with Lien. He answered, not only that, but Ailey also interacted with Lien Zaman. Luca responded, Ailey and I aren't the kind of foolish soldiers who would jeopardize a mission for such things. Surely you understand that better than anyone, Captain. Remembering Lien's image, Luca carefully explained to Himilias, his hands clasped behind his back, trembling uncontrollably. But his face remained calm as he continued. Honestly, I partly wanted to give Lien hope. If she could complete the task of guiding us, she might be able to live. We could only see that as the only humane thing to do for her. Himilias' sharp gaze seemed to pierce through him. He returned the gaze, as if in affirmation. That's enough. Suddenly, Himilias burst out laughing, then extended his hand, inviting Luca to leave. All right, you must be tired. Let's end this here. Luca turned to leave. With your permission, sir. Himilias suddenly called him back. Luca! He picked up a glass of water and looked at Luca slyly, saying, it seems House Zaman is more capable than I thought. Ailey's squad was wiped out just like that. Luca was startled by these words. He froze, trying to appear calm in the face of Himilias' probing words. I need to stay calm. Everything was written in the report. Ailey's squad was ambushed by rebels due to their hasty pursuit, leading to the entire squad's annihilation. But why does he seem to be scrutinizing me? Just one slip up, and I'll break out in a cold sweat. Despite his trembling hands, Luca calmly turned back to Himilias and replied, if it were my squad, that wouldn't have happened. It seems the top spot in this class is already in my hands. Himilias smiled and said, that's certainly something to look forward to. On the high-speed train, he leaned his head on his hand, closing his eyes, and thought to himself, I was dead tired on the way back to the capital, and understandably so. It's been several days of constant tension. My mind keeps dwelling on the terrible things that happened there. Ailey, Lien, the fortress, Akane, the artifact, the spatial displacement device. He remembered Lien, but death had prevented her from escaping the Empire. That death came at the hands of the person she considered a knight, Ailey. A darkness descended, enveloping Luca's thoughts. I can't look Ailey in the eye. Ailey's image appeared once again in his mind. It must be because I was there that he killed Lien. If I hadn't been there, he surely would have faced the same end with her. Then the image of himself appeared. In any case, my goal has been achieved, protecting Ailey's life. Exactly. That's enough. A light gradually brightened his thoughts. Luca covered his eyes with his hand. When we arrived in the capital, Abazin, we rested and performed equipment maintenance. We received medals of valor for our contributions in the battle. Luca opened his eyes, thinking about the 7th class cross sword medal. Only Ailey and I received this medal among all the guard trainees. But I received a medal. How laughable. On the rooftop terrace, Luca asked Ailey, I didn't expect you to kill Lien. Ailey leaned listlessly against the wall. Luca continued, I thought you would resist the guard at all costs. Ailey pondered for a moment and replied, I would have, if I were alone. Although my family has close ties with the Zaman family, they were still pleased with my accomplishment. Ailey raised his voice, advising, quit being a trainee. You're not suited to be a guard. Ailey murdered a comrade just for that thing called love. Luca responded, you skewered a comrade just for personal feelings. Ailey pondered for a moment and said, I'd like to, if I could quit, but it's not easy. My family will do everything to get me into the guard. They might as well just stab me. Luca blurted out after hearing this. Watch your words, Ailey. But at this moment, Luca was startled to see Ailey's unusual expression. This pain is quite intense. My internal organs are probably damaged. He slumped down, his metal falling and splitting in two. Luca looked at Ailey and said, stop pretending. If it's broken, it can just be replaced with mechanical parts. Ailey trembled with pain, clutching the balcony railing. This time back, it's the first time I felt resentment towards my past self for not dedicating myself to training. Ailey slumped against the wall and said, even if you work yourself to the bone, nothing will change, Luca. Luca thought to himself, what am I doing? He stood watching Ailey lean wearily against the wall, thinking, I can only remain silent. Ailey wasn't a cold-blooded beggar. He must be facing the guilt of stabbing his comrades. Moreover, he still couldn't save Lien despite causing so much chaos. He'll soon face death. Just as Luca thought, Ailey covered his face and wept, tears of grief rolling down his cheeks. Luca saw that both mentally and physically, Ailey needed to leave this empire. Ailey suddenly said, Luca, I'm going to request a leave of absence and go home for a while. It's almost my 4th year, so I should be able to take a few months off. Luca just nodded without saying a word, looking up at the dazzling sunlight in the sky. Then they both turned to enter the elevator. Luca suddenly asked, I wanted to ask you something earlier. Why did Lien smile when she saw my family being stabbed? Ailey replied, Lien was engaged to someone through an arranged marriage. He was 30 years older than her. When Lien was born, that man demanded that they raise her to be just like his deceased wife. He demanded what? He provided a set of photos, videos, and a lot of documents to force her to become exactly like his former wife. From her face, hobbies, gestures, and even her name. Luca thought for a moment. She wasn't allowed to have any personal will. She must have been in so much pain. Ailey thought Lien knowing so much about Biala must also be. Because of that, he chuckled bitterly and continued. The formation of distorted desires when holding power. She was abused from the moment she was born. Luca quickly asked, so, Laws introducing Lien to me was. Luca didn't finish his sentence before Ailey interrupted that IT was my and Lien's plan. When I said you were the illegitimate child of the guard captain, Laws immediately believed it. Luca cursed under his breath. That bastard. He said, wait a minute, Laws believe that? Everyone could see how much special treatment you received from the captain. Ailey laughed and explained, the fact that you were an orphan from the orphanage and became a guard trainee isn't hard to understand, since the guard captain is from the Kutozia family. I thought that if Lien got married and had children, she would be freed. Hearing this, Luca thought to himself, really, one person after another, why does everyone think that way? It's strange. Why does everyone think the same way? He still considered Ailey a friend, but he also knew. He closed his eyes, speechless, thinking, Ailey is my friend, but he's not a good person. After parting ways with Ailey, Luca went to the surveillance room to visit Kinnan. He was reading a book and laughed loudly when he saw Luca arrive. What, do you enjoy getting beaten? Luca didn't reply, but thought, the war hero has finally shown. Now, I still visit Kinnan frequently. He's under surveillance. I pulled a chair over and sat down opposite him. He knew I was following the guard captain's orders. Seeing Luca didn't reply, Kinnan continued, you received the Cross Sword Medal of Honor, right? Luca replied, it's just a medal. Nothing compared to your glorious achievements, instructor. But inwardly, he thought, I feel at ease around Kinnan. He continued, the guard captain said, if I want to learn how to manage subordinates, I should seek you out and ask you, Instructor Kinnan. Kinnan chuckled. Himiliat said that? Haha, he overestimates me. But I have reviewed your combat records. I might be able to offer some advice. Are your subordinates disobeying you? Luca replied, no, they're all excellent soldiers of the Empire. They're willing to jump into a firestorm, even if the order comes from an unfamiliar captain like me. Kinnan analyzed, in that case, you must be too kind of commander. Instead of sacrificing your subordinates, you choose to take on more risks yourself. Luca's eyes widened as he listened. He shook his head and replied, "Not really. Wouldn't that diminish our combat effectiveness?" Kinnan seriously replied, "When you constantly put yourself on the front lines, the strain on your nervous system accumulates. This affects your ability to make critical decisions. You'll waste resources that should be used to protect your entire squad." Luca jumped up after hearing this and shouted, "So you're saying I should sacrifice my subordinates?" Kinnan reached out and pressed a control on the table, projecting a 3D holographic image, then explained. He pressed another button, and images of the people Luca had helped appeared. Looking at Ziza and Gaji, Kinnan continued, "Do you remember Gaji and Ziza from the lower sectors? You saved Ziza from the gang and paid Gaji's medical bills. Those two would readily help you." Luca replied, "Comfortably, of course, because I helped them before." Kinnan said mysteriously, "But that's not enough. For them to willingly sacrifice themselves, you must build deeper relationships. However, you also need to maintain a certain emotional distance. If you build too strong a bond, you'll hesitate when you have to sacrifice them." Luca said pensively, "That doesn't sound appealing at all." Kinnan said with amusement, "I like that about you, Luca. You're just the kind of good person I like." Kinnan concluded, "In short, accept love, but don't love back." He chuckled mysteriously, the secret to holding the initiative in any relationship. Luca asked suspiciously, "But I have a question. What if my conscience can't bear sacrificing others? Like feelings of guilt or remorse?" Kinnan offered sincere advice. "You need to experience it and get used to it. If you can't, you'll never be able to stand above others." After hearing Kinnan, Luca abruptly stood up and left, but not before leaving. A parting remark, "From now on, I'll actively utilize my subordinates." Hearing this, Kinnan immediately assessed, "You're really suited to being a good person, Luca. Tomorrow, you'll go to the Kadia Academy." Luca asked in surprise what. Himiliat laughed in response, "Haha, you seem surprised. It's only 2 months at most. It will definitely be a good experience." Luca said, "I thought I wouldn't be chosen. You said that, traditionally, only those with excellent training records are selected." Eiley declined. He said he wanted to rest at home for a while. Luca pondered silently. Ultimately, he still hasn't overcome everything. Himiliat continued, "You haven't experienced aristocratic society, but that will be troublesome for you if you truly want to become a part of the Ku-Tozia family." Luca closed his eyes and said in a low voice, "If you say so, I'll go." He said softly, "All right, I'll arrange a guide for you. I think you'll be satisfied with this person." Luca stood beneath the bright sky, stroking his hair and murmuring, "They should be arriving soon." Luca's eyes were filled with worry. The sound of an aircraft roared in the sky. He held his luggage and watched as the aircraft opened its doors. Waiting for him, Zicely spoke up, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and get inside." So Luca stepped inside and saw Zicely already seated opposite him. Luca placed his hand on his chest, knelt and bowed to her. "I am Luca, a trainee guard." Zicely replied, "I already know all that. No need to say much." Luca clenched his fist and thought to himself, "This young lady's personality disgusts me. I want to break her arrogance. Typical nobility." He replied, "Miss Ku-Tozia." Hearing this, she flinched. Zicely turned her face away and asked, "How did you know?" Luca answered, "Just a bit of deduction. There aren't many who would dare show such lack of cooperation before Commander Himilia Ku-Tozia of the Guard." She responded, seemingly annoyed, "Shouldn't you know your place?" Luca said, "If you're curious, ask your father." He looked at the irritated Zicely and thought, "This must be the commander's daughter. If the commander sent her beloved daughter here, it must mean she's keeping her promise to adopt me." Luca Ku-Tozia. Luca rested his chin on his hand, pondering. He smiled slightly, "Doesn't sound bad." Zicely's voice interrupted his train of thought. "You guessed right. The commander of the guard is my father." She looked directly at him. "Zicely. I'm Zicely Ku-Tozia, but don't ever act like you're ordering me around again. I find it extremely unpleasant." He thought, Lyman is more agreeable. Luca replied, "If you find it unpleasant, then I apologize." He suddenly remembered his upbringing in the slums. "Wait, why should I lower myself to apologize to her? After everything I've been through, I won't suffer like this just to satisfy some noble. I hate that kind of life. That's why I agreed to carry out the mission at the academy. The commander surely understands me." Luca stroked his head and laughed. He looked at Zicely and said, "Forget it. Flattering someone I hate, I'd rather bite my tongue off. Let's just do what we're told. You lead the way, and I'll follow." "All right." Hearing this, Zicely gritted her teeth, her hands gripping the armrests as she glared at Luca with indignation. But she couldn't do anything more than turn away. Luca, no longer paying attention to her, thought, "This journey doesn't seem like it will be easy." The aircraft reached its destination and landed. Luca followed behind Zicely. They both walked up the stairs. "Koku, follow me. I'll take you to the dormitory." Luca looked at the unfamiliar surroundings. A towering statue, the symbol of the academy, appeared before him. Words were engraved on the monument. "The Empire honors the founder and protector of humanity. Praise Zeno Kadia." The statue's face was solemn and majestic. Lucas stared at the monument. Is this the Cadia Academy I've only seen in pictures? The scene before him gradually revealed itself, modern and developed, and magnificent. As Luca set foot down, the curious gazes of everyone around him focused on him. Zicily spoke as she walked. Purple is for students. Lower the saturation. People parted to make way for the two of them. Suddenly, a young man was shoved hard from behind, causing him to fall to the ground in front of Luca. He looked at the young man, unable to do anything. Even with a good background, these guys act so uncivilized. He heard Zicily's voice ask, "What are you doing?" She raised her wrist device sharply. "Don't you have the color-changing feature?" Luca replied, "Students don't need that feature." She raised her voice. Without proper preparation, "What will you do if something happens?" She thought, "Father always reminds me, always tells me." He smirked that it's just the color of clothes. Why make such a fuss? So different from my initial impression of her. Lucas said, "All right, I apologize." "Zicily, if you keep disregarding the rules like this." In the distance, Philip, walking with his arm around a friend, looked back. Hearing his name called, "Luca," he looked over. He saw Philip cheerfully waving. Philip walked over and clapped Luca on the shoulder. "Welcome. I thought you wouldn't come without Eily." "Luca, no way." Philip asked Zicily, "Have we met somewhere before?" Zicily Tozia. "I'm Philip Engin, a satellite student in the same year as Luca. May I borrow Luca for a moment?" She was flustered. Of course. "Let me know when you're done." Luca was secretly relieved. Thank goodness for Philip. Finally, some relief. Philip whispered as he put his arm around Luca, "Miss Tozia is with you. The rumors about the guard captain favoring you seem to be true." Luca said, "I was also quite surprised to learn she's the captain's daughter. She ignored me at first. If I met her outside, her nose wouldn't be intact." Zicily stood at a distance, watching the two whispering. Philip continued, "It's good for you to get acquainted with the aristocracy. Do you have any idea what the guard captain has planned for your future?" "I have no clue." He nudged Luca. "Maybe you'll even become their son-in-law." Luca replied, "Don't be ridiculous." Philip didn't seem to want to stop. "No, I'm serious. You'll be interacting more with the aristocracy." Luca thought, son-in-law, delusional. The image of Zicily's haughty demeanor on the aircraft flashed in his mind. "I know my personality isn't great. If my wife also had a terrible personality like me, I'm afraid any relationships would go down the drain." Luca remembered Kinnan. "Besides, I have an agreement with the captain. I can monitor Kinnan, and in return, I'll be adopted into the Tozia family. It's a secret agreement. No need to be a son-in-law. I'll become an adopted son of the Tozia family." "Nice dream, Philip." Zicily was still patiently waiting for their conversation to end. Philip continued, "Luca, have you fixed that yet?" He replied, "No, why?" He then handed Luca a small box of 3 Wolf cigarettes. "If not, then keep this safe." Luca blushed as he looked at the small box in his hand. Philip then put his arm around his female friend and waved goodbye to Luca meaningfully. "Girls really admire the trainees who get sent away like you." Luca quickly put the small box in his pocket. Philip had also told him the necessary information for living in this academy. It seemed that after this event, he might become closer to Philip. He remembered the Agertan symbol drawn on the building. Philip had also mentioned the dormitory. Basically, it's like this. This place is for people from poor backgrounds like us. Even if you're exceptionally talented or the child of a declining family, you have to stay here. Because lowly people like us can't afford to find our own place. Luca's expression became resolute as, "Oh, even here, there's a hierarchy. Well, it wouldn't be fun if it were easy to reach the top." Luca followed Zicily. Lost in his thoughts, "Let's take a look around." He and Zicily went inside the dormitory. Everything there surprised him. A robot took his luggage and led him to his room. "This is Mr. Luca's room. If you need anything, just let me know." He replied, "This place is even better than a palace. I'm sure there's nothing lacking." Luca touched the items in the room. "Oh, this is where fallen nobles and lower-class people live. The class difference is real. Perhaps this is where exceptionally talented people gather, even if they aren't suited to becoming soldiers." Lucas sat on the chair and looked up at the ceiling. He closed his eyes and thought, the outward appearance is so different. He remembered earlier that day, Zicily had led him there. "This is your place." She opened her communication device. "Right after class ends, the dormitory manager will come and guide you. This is my communication ID. Call me if you need anything." Luca asked her, "Do you hate me?" Zicily replied, "I have no intention of neglecting the duty my father gave me." He received her contact information and thought, so she also has a sense of responsibility. She's not just a spoiled young lady. Luca looked at Zicily. "I'll call you if there's something important." She reiterated, "Make sure it's important." Zicily added, "Also, I'll give you some sincere advice. Don't get too close to the dormitory manager." Luca, remembering this, opened his eyes. At the time, he had asked why. Footsteps approached. Zicily had answered, "Because she's not simple. She's the craziest person at Cadia Academy." A girl with curly hair was skipping along. Zicily turned her back to him and whispered, "Oh, I have some sincere advice for you. It's best not to approach the dormitory manager." Luca said in surprise, "Why is that?" While he was recalling Zicily's words, the doorbell rang outside. Luca pushed himself up, just as the person outside was about to ring the bell again. The door swung open. The curly-haired, brown-haired girl was speechless with embarrassment when she saw him. Seeing her appearance, Zicily's words echoed in his head, "Because she's the craziest person at Cadia Academy." After a moment, she regained her composure and introduced herself. "Oh, hello. I'm Babaza, the dormitory manager." After speaking, Babaza stammered shyly. Luca was also affected by the awkward atmosphere. He scratched his head and introduced himself. I'm Luca, a trainee from the Guard Corps. I've been dispatched here." He looked at Babaza, who stammered, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Luca. I came right after class. Did you wait long?" Luca silently assessed her. Worn sleeves, frayed collar, no family name, only a given name, definitely from the lower levels. But her appearance was completely different from what he'd imagined. The craziest one? She didn't seem like it. Could it be that Zicily simply disliked people from the lower levels? Thinking to himself, Luca waved his hand dismissively. "Not at all. I just got here myself." Babaza mumbled shyly, "How should I address you?" Luca tried to dispel the uncomfortable awkwardness. Just call me whatever you're comfortable with. I'm from the lower levels too." Hearing this, Babaza immediately praised him. "All right, Luca, you're admirable, just like the rumors say. Coming from the lower levels and becoming a Guard Corps trainee." Luca politely replied, "Babaza, you're the same as me. You also came from there. Besides, becoming a dormitory manager is quite an accomplishment." Hearing this, Babaza smiled brightly. Seeing her happy expression, he unconsciously smirked slightly. She must have worked very hard to get where she is today, just like him. She turned around, saying cheerfully, "Follow me, Luca. I'll show you around the dormitory." No refusing. It's the dormitory manager's responsibility. It was at this moment, as she turned, that Luca noticed a few droplets of water fly into the air. He wondered, did she already shower after class? She must have been in a hurry. He kept looking at her back, trying to convince himself, but if she's a diligent person, it's understandable. The day of the gathering arrived quickly. It was held at the Academy's main building, where many new recruits were currently gathered. Among them was Zicily. Luca quickly walked towards her. Zicily noticed him and said softly, "Dress just like I told you, huh? Come on, let's go to class. My father ordered me to attend the same class as you for a week." Inwardly, he screamed, "A whole week in the same class? I'm gonna go crazy." Suddenly, a voice called out from behind them, "Zicily." Upon hearing this voice, he had a hunch. That's Babaza's voice. Sure enough, it was her. Babaza bowed her head slightly and said softly, "Long time no see, Zicily." Zicily reacted strongly to the voice. She glanced at Babaza and angrily shouted, "Get out of my sight, Babaza." Babaza fearfully raised her hands to her face, her body trembling involuntarily. "I just wanted to say hello." As if not satisfied, Zicily continued walking, approaching Babaza and looking at her with cold eyes. "Hello, Babaza. Now get lost." Babaza's face darkened, and she cowered in fear. Zicily growled, "All right, now get out of here. I have nothing to say to you." Then she immediately turned and left. "Come on, Luca, if you don't want to be late for our first class." This scene suddenly gave Luca a different perspective on this petite girl. Looking at Babaza cowering, like the losers he often saw in the lower levels, he thought, how did someone like that become a dormitory manager? Thinking to himself, he turned sharply and walked away, muttering under his breath, "How irritating." The two of them walked for a bit before Luca asked, "You seem to know Babaza quite well." Giselle didn't turn around, replying calmly, "I just know her face. We enrolled at the same time." Seeing her willingness to speak, he continued to ask, his tone almost a statement, "You hate Babaza, don't you?" Giselle fell silent for a long moment. Luca grew slightly annoyed. Ignoring me? He remembered that before. Giselle had once called Babaza the craziest person at Cadia Academy, yet Babaza still kept clinging to her. Interesting, he thought, but it doesn't concern me. The important thing is if I can smoothly survive these 2 months, I'll become a noble. There's no need to bother with such gossip. Luca thought as he idly flipped a knife. At least, that's what I thought. But having to listen to boring lectures for a whole week made him suddenly want to delve into the relationship between Giselle and Babaza. In this academy, full of pampered nobles, there was nothing to alleviate his boredom. Luca maintained the rhythm of flipping his knife, his gaze listless and dull. The most interesting person, Felix, was too proud to fight him. At this rate, his battle senses would rust. His inner self was going crazy. He really wanted to fight. Perhaps because during his time as a trainee, he had been injected with synthetic drugs and modified. Now his mind was filled with thoughts like a fighting machine, helplessly repeating, I want to fight so badly. Anyone will do. Just come and pick a fight with me. As if his wish had been granted, a loud voice immediately provoked him. Hey, Guard Corps trainee. Hearing this, he immediately caught the freely falling knife between 2 fingers. Luca glanced coldly towards the source of the sound. Seeing this, the person repeated, "That's right, you." He thought some thug had come looking for trouble, but it turned out to be an effeminate dandy. The dandy pointed at him and angrily shouted, "How dare you follow Giselle around for a whole week? What's your relationship with her?" Luca put on an innocent face. "I'm under no obligation to answer that question." "What? Are you in love with Giselle?" The young man seemed to have been struck in the heart. Blushing, he looked at the dandy's appearance and then thought of Giselle's icy expression and couldn't help but be astonished. Really? This guy has a crush on her. Luca chuckled, deliberately provoking him. What's so good about someone as cold as her? Hearing this, the young man angrily swung his fist at him. "You take that back." His eyes narrowed at his opponent. Of course, this punch was completely harmless to him. Luca grabbed the young man's wrist and twisted it back. The young man cried out in pain. Luca sighed, still holding his wrist tightly. Realizing he'd been a bit rough, he quickly let go. "I can't believe I took my anger out on a small fry like this. How despicable, Luca." The young man tearfully wiped his eyes. "Hick, you really don't have any relationship with Giselle?" Luca suppressed his irritation, also taking the opportunity to probe a little. "Yeah, and I have a question too." The young man actually dared to play hard to get with him. "Why should I answer you?" Luca silently swallowed his rage. This guy dares to, whatever. An idea suddenly struck him. "I'll put in a good word for you with Giselle." "Why is Giselle hostile towards Babaza?" The boy obediently answered Luca's question. "It wasn't like that at first, but she was cursed by that witch." Luca asked, slightly surprised. "Cursed? Who's the witch?" The boy continued, "It's Babaza. Everyone close to her gets caught up in android malfunctions. Androids rarely malfunction, so we call it Babaza's curse." Luca's anger subsided, replaced by intrigue. "The odds of that happening are ridiculously low, but how is it Babaza's fault?" The boy immediately added, "That's what's scary about her. Even though she knows anyone close to her will suffer, she still wants to make friends. Is that normal?" Luca started to understand. Oh, that's why everyone avoids her and pushed the thankless job of dormitory manager onto her. It wasn't based on merit then. The boy suddenly pointed nearby. "Ah, look, it's happening again." A cup of water was poured directly onto Babaza, soaking her completely, but she didn't react. 3 girls laughed, enjoying her humiliation. The girl with the twin buns mocked her. "Oops, I'm so clumsy. I'll wash it and give it back to you. So take your shirt off." Babaza looked up at them weakly. "H here? It's okay, I can go change." The girl burst out laughing. Did I just hear that right? Someone like Babaza is refusing my kindness. "Well," she said, her face turning serious, "take it off and give it to me. I'll wash it good as new and return it." Babaza's hands trembled as she clenched them, but she couldn't bring herself to resist. Babaza slowly reached for her shirt and began to unbutton it. Watching her, Luca frowned, remembering his first day. So that's what happened. She must have rushed to shower after something similar happened then. "You're lucky, Babaza." He twirled the small knife in his hand and abruptly threw it forward, unable to stand the injustice any longer. The knife pinned the cup to the wall, making the girl scream in fright. Lucas stood up and said coldly, "Cut the crap and get out of here." The girl yelled angrily. "Do you know what he just did?" Luca cut her off, his words making her face pale. "I can hit girls, and I won't hesitate to hit you in the face." The 3 girls, fuming, left in silence. Luca was still watching them when he heard a small voice. Luca." He turned to see her drenched and miserable state. Babaza, soaking wet, softly said, "Thank you." This was exactly his intention. Luca smiled slyly. "Now I'm probably close enough to her to be attacked by an android, right?" The boy suddenly stopped running, panting. He asked Luca fearfully, "Why Kalisa Kano? You've run into a troublesome one." He was the one who had frantically grabbed Luca's hand and pulled him away earlier. Luca had thought something important was happening, but it turned out to be this. "Everything always comes back to me," he thought. "I don't want to and can't do anything." Luca coldly replied, "I also know who she is, but a weak family like hers isn't worth worrying about, no matter how troublesome." He, as if haunted by her, fearfully explained, "That's just on the surface. Her family actually runs a criminal gang operating in the slums, making money through illegal activities. They're probably investigating your background right now." Luca waved his hand dismissively, adding, "It's best to let them. I'm bored anyway." He was even more shocked after hearing this. Be careful, though. Kalisa is known for seeking revenge when insulted. That's why she tormented Babaza. She said it started when her boyfriend fell victim to Babaza's curse. He suddenly understood. I see. As they were talking, Giselle approached from afar. With an annoyed expression, Tisk, Luca teased him, making him blush crimson with embarrassment. "Hey, why don't you go say hello to Giselle? You like her, don't you? She's just a spoiled brat anyway." He waved his hands frantically, tried to avoid the subject. I'm content just admiring her from afar. Instead, make sure to put a good word for me with Giselle, okay? After that, he turned and ran off. She greeted Luca indifferently that it seems you've made a new friend. Luca turned to Giselle and spoke honestly, telling her everything. Yes, his name is Enrico. He's a kind and friendly person. As soon as she heard this, she made a disgusted face that, that's so? Honestly, I find him quite annoying. He's always hovering around me. Luca was quite surprised, thinking to himself, it looks like you don't have much of a chance, Enrico. Luca walked along the corridor, approaching a room where someone was speaking. Hey, Luca, I heard you threw a knife at a student. Is that right? It was the voice of Professor Sando of the Gitmoven Guard. He was holding a small knife in his hand. It's not a big deal, but it could be troublesome if it gets reported to the faculty. I understand you're a bit frustrated here, but please try to control your temper. The professor looked at him and continued. You're like a wolf thrown into a flock of docile sheep. The children here aren't taught how to fight. Luca still seemed to be holding on to his frustration, but everyone acts as if my fangs can't touch them. Sando laughed after hearing this. Haha, now I understand why Himiliat values you. He scratched his head ruefully. Although there are only diligent students here, they will eventually become high-ranking officials and direct us in the future. You can consider them harmless sheep, but you also need to be careful because there are monsters among them. After saying this, the professor handed him the small knife, carefully advising, these monsters are educated. They could be considered terrifying monsters that even wolves like you would have difficulty dealing with. He continued his rambling lecture. Even if you're hot-tempered or frustrated, avoid causing trouble to prevent running into these monsters. Luca lowered his head and accepted the knife, replying, I understand. Luca walked out of the room, feeling somewhat dejected. Currently, what he was pursuing wasn't these monsters, but the witch's curse. As soon as he thought of this, the corners of his mouth unconsciously curved upwards. Luca walked alone down the road, behind the gymnasium, long past curfew. The story of him rescuing Baba had spread everywhere. If the rumors were true, then the out-of-control androids should be attacking him by now. Right? But just then, someone approached him from behind. Before he could turn around, the person spoke. You're Luca, the exchange student, right? He stared coldly into the man's eyes and said, what do you want? Two more men appeared around him. The first man added, Kalisa told me to give you her regards. Equal retribution is the family motto. Kano, Luca's anger flared. He cursed inwardly. Does she really think she can even touch me? The man sneered, I'll give you one last chance. Kneel and apologize to Kalisa. What's the big deal? He lunged angrily at Luca. How about this? Luca observed his body and couldn't help but scoff. Tisk, look at that. An overloaded frame installed on a body that can't handle it. Suddenly, something whizzed past. An android appeared before them. It scanned them with a red light on its head. The man being scanned by the android forced a laugh that I checked thoroughly. Androids aren't allowed to operate in this area. The leader pointed at it and yelled angrily, what the beep is that? Despite their frustration, they had no choice but to turn and retreat. Are you crazy? Fighting right in front of an android? Let's go. The second man also cursed angrily. Perfect timing. Piece of junk. The android remained in a defensive stance, saying to Luca, need help? Need assistance? Suddenly, the android began to malfunction, stuttering. That is impossible. I cannot. The men stared in bewilderment as the robot shook its head uncontrollably. The man standing closest was suddenly hit with an uppercut, his head flying off his body, blood spraying everywhere. It happened so fast that even Luca was startled. The large man, who had been so aggressive just moments before, now hid behind Luca, speechless. The android quickly jumped up, preparing to attack its next target. But just then, it was struck and knocked to the ground. Luca smiled with interest. Baba's curse. The witch's curse. Is it real? A student of the prestigious Cadia Academy believes in such nonsense as curses? The android struggled to its feet. Luca observed and thought, a frame operating at overcapacity for a short period. He looked at the small light on the android's head and added, but it's the deliberate action of a human, like it's being controlled by someone. As soon as he thought of this, a strange smile crept onto his face. The android was knocked down again, but quickly got back up and charged straight at Luca. Thanks to his AI eyes, Luca easily recognized its attack pattern. He leaned to the side, smoothly dodging the android's slash. Luca smiled excitedly. Even though it's lost control, its attacks aren't wasted. It seems to have a pretty decent combat program. Perfect. He looked down at the android's long, clawed hands in amazement. With such sharp iron claws, this robot's combat ability was undeniable. Although the android was fast and strong, its intelligence and ferocity weren't enough to satisfy him. Luca effortlessly dodged all of its attacks. With his experience fighting numerous opponents, this robot was only average. He needed something more powerful, something to further stimulate his fighting instincts. Having said that, Luca kicked the robot squarely in the head, sending it flying several meters. He still needed something vastly different from these ordinary androids. The android persistently charged forward, attacking without any sign of stopping. Luca swung his arm, a glint of excitement in his eyes that if you're programmed to fight, then show me something different. Suddenly, a spinning knife appeared behind the robot, hurtling towards it. The android briefly glanced back, but then immediately looked straight ahead. Luca nimbly jumped onto it, grabbing its arms and pulling them outwards. This level of combat prowess is completely inadequate. The man who had given the orders to Kalisa was now completely terrified, his initial bravado long gone. Luca used the android as a landing, decisively ripping off its arms. With no creativity in actual combat, you're no different from the robots I've defeated before. The android lay defeated at his feet, its broken voice still uttering, "Help, need help." Luca's right prosthetic arm glowed in the darkness, making him look like a villain from a comic book. He looked at the other man, coldly challenging him. You still want to fight me? Go ahead, stand up. This isn't nearly enough to satisfy my urge to fight. Upon hearing this, the man scrambled to his feet and ran away. Luca returned to his normal state, shaking his head in disappointment, pathetically weak. Suddenly, a light shone down from above. A surveillance drone had spotted him. His outing was over. Luca sat down in his usual spot outside the school, resting his chin in his hand, lost in thought. After the fight with the robot, he had received a request to cooperate with the school's security team in their investigation. Zelie Macambell, a security investigator, had called him indirectly. The person who programmed and controlled the robot was definitely someone within the academy. Now, the security team was urgently investigating to find the suspect. The aristocracy didn't want their children investigated, but with the student now assaulted, the matter couldn't be ignored. After listening, Luca also offered his opinion. The way you speak, it sounds like the perpetrator is from the aristocracy. What if they're from the lower class? Zyto shook his head in denial. Logically speaking, that's completely impossible. Ordinary students can't bypass the security measures to access the academy systems. Luca asked doubtfully, "But you want me to investigate this? I'm just an ordinary student. How can I possibly do that?" Zyto wasn't particularly surprised by his expression. He said, "Not everyone can use Akavitama. Only those with sharp intuition can. If you possess that intuition, you're perfectly capable of carrying out the duties of an investigator." Lucas stared at him, slightly taken aback. "Is that it?" Seeing his silence, Zyto added, "If you don't know, I can tell you something interesting about it. Those who can use Akavitama are usually such noteworthy individuals that a separate list is kept to manage them. And for someone with your training, it's not surprising that you've attracted attention." Luca became even more curious. Why would there be such a case? Zyto didn't answer directly, but hinted. "You'll need to ask the person who taught you Akavitama about that." Luca thought of that person, and 1,000 questions sprang to mind. "Kinnan, who are you really?" Just then, he heard someone call him from behind. "Luca." He turned to see Zicily rushing towards him, exclaiming, "Why did you let something like that happen? If something happens to you, what am I supposed to tell father? He told me to look after you. I'm warning you. Stay away from Barbara." Luca stood up and said calmly, "I saw so many people bullying her. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." Zicily grew even more indignant. "What? You're saying you were willing to fight and put yourself in danger because of that?" Luca thought it was obvious. He replied, "They started it with me. I couldn't just sit still." Zicily bit her nails, then lost her composure and yelled, "Fine, I'll go see Kalisa. I'll ask her to reconcile with you. If I talk to her, she'll have to agree to a compromise." Hearing this, Luca tilted his head in confusion. "Is that really necessary? Why would you mediate between me and Kalisa?" His right eye then lit up as he pondered. "But if she mediates, Kalisa will have to compromise. That means Zicily can completely control Kalisa to some extent." Having thought it over, Luca quickly spoke up. "All right, thank you. Please go see Kalisa and mediate." Zicily was a little surprised by his words. Luca gave her a bright, cheerful smile. "I don't want to cause trouble for the commander while I'm still studying here." Although he said that, he had another important matter on his mind. "From here, I need to confirm a few things." When the two of them arrived at Kalisa's room and asked her to explain the situation, Kalisa immediately adopted the mentality of a victim, clutching her head and wailing, "It's all Barbara's fault. She seduced my boyfriend first." Luca remained completely calm, not falling for her act. He slowly said, "I don't think things are that simple, are they? Isn't it true that you were the one who deliberately arranged for your boyfriend to go to Barbara and attract her attention?" As soon as he finished speaking, her expression immediately changed. "What?" Luca tapped a white square on the chessboard, where his girlfriend's face reappeared. He continued, "That's why you had an excuse to start trouble with Barbara, right? How could Barbara avoid it? You pulled a similar stunt on me the other day." The chessboard suddenly transformed into a small screen, displaying the conversation between him and a man in the forest. "Kalisa sends her regards. This matter involves her. which means it involves the Kano family. Luca, having gained the upper hand, quickly made his accusation. As I said, you just needed a reason to cause trouble for Barbara, right? Kalisa slammed her hand on the table and yelled, "You bastard. Stop talking nonsense. I didn't do anything wrong." Giselle held her forehead in frustration. "Calm down, Barbara." Seeing that Giselle wasn't taking her side, Kalisa felt wronged. But Giselle immediately shot her a warning look. "Enough, Kalisa. Are you going to ignore everything I say?" Seeing Giselle's expression, Kalisa didn't dare say anything more, only letting out a small, angry huff. Giselle lowered her head and spoke to Luca. "Luca, go back to your room. I need to talk to Kalisa for a bit." Having confirmed his suspicions, Luca saw no reason to stay, all right. He walked out into the hallway, lost in thought. Just as he suspected, Kalisa and Giselle had an unclear relationship. But he had one question. Why did Giselle know that Kalisa was causing trouble for Barbara, but didn't tell her to stop the bullying? He had only been studying at this academy for about 2 months. Stopping the conflict between these people and finding the cause wouldn't be simple. Just then, he heard footsteps behind him. Giselle, holding her head, scolded him. "I just warned you not to cause trouble at the academy, and you're already causing more. It's so tiring. Do you just enjoy bothering me?" Luca stood his ground. "I only did that to investigate who's behind controlling those robots, to see if it's the aristocracy, and also to see why Kalisa hates Barbara so much." Giselle gave him an exasperated look. Oh, you think you're playing detective? Whatever happens at this academy, the security team will investigate." Luca immediately retorted. "Would they dare investigate the children of the aristocracy at this academy?" Giselle looked at him with a serious expression. "What do you mean by that?" He calmly voiced his suspicions. "I'm just stating the facts, like how Kalisa wouldn't dare go against your wishes." Giselle frowned, her composure slipping. Within the aristocracy, there's a natural hierarchy. Kalisa doesn't have enough status to confront me, so she has to endure it. Luca then directly asked, "So that's why you told Kalisa to go bully and cause trouble for Barbara?" Giselle's face paled as her secret was exposed. Her fists clenched as she angrily said, "What are you trying to say?" Luca spread his hands, explaining, "Well, Kalisa is basically your pawn. Coincidentally, she also hates Barbara, so you took advantage of that to make things worse." Giselle immediately stepped towards him, violently grabbing his collar and yelling, "Don't spout nonsense." Her whole body trembled, her face lowered. "Have you had too many artificial parts installed that your brain has gone haywire? How dare you say that?" Realizing her outburst, she quickly let go. "Sorry, I overreacted." She then turned and left, not forgetting to remind him, "Anyway, it's best you don't cause any more trouble at the academy anymore." He didn't realize that his every word and action were seen through by Luca, that it seems like Giselle is behind